Es que no aguanto, baby, no puedo esperar. Mi cura, ven pa' acá. Es que esa nena mi cura. Lo que tú me das. Es que esa nena mi cura. Ven pa' acá. Es que esa nena mi cura. Yo quiero más. Dime que esta noche tú serás mía. No puedo olvidar lo que tú me hacías. No te demores más, mata esta agonía. Porque si no estás, las noches son frías. Sí, baby, tú eres para mí, igual que yo para ti. Desde el momento en que te vi, pienso en ti todo el día.
Sí, baby, tú eres para mí, igual que yo para ti. Desde el momento en que te vi, pienso en ti todo el día.
The penultimate day of DreamHack Open Fall starts right now. But for one of these two teams, it is the end of the road. Our lower bracket matchup between NiP and Heroic. We've not had the pleasure of casting NiP so far, Tom. So this should be an interesting one to get into. And they've turned a lot of heads. They've had some really good results.
Yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised that you look at a lot of their rankings within, for example, the Pro Tour, they're quite far down the list. Like a recent tournaments obviously being played with Threat didn't go particularly well. And now they've sort of added a player back into the roster. You go, okay, well, they're going to need some time to pick up some steam. And instead, top four. That's already a huge win in my books. I think looking at all the teams they've gone through as well, like they smashed OG, who've been a team that we've been sort of raving about throughout the tournament. We'd be like, yeah, OG look fantastic. They've knocked out Fnatic, who've been on the rise. They knocked out FaZe, or at least beat them earlier, as they were a team as well, who'd recently won a tournament. They have been tearing through everyone in their path, who we expected them to fail to. And I'll be honest, at this point, we have to start believing in some NiP magic once again.
Absolutely cannot write them off. Heroic, though, second in the world for good reason. This is a team that you cannot sleep on, even though they've had a couple of sketchy results. This is a map that they are certainly comfortable with. Starting on the T side, already occupying down on the ramp, all 5 players strong. And they have a healthy dosage of grenades between the two of them, looking for a potential boost over from Haidian. Having a quick peer up, now a run boost across. As they look to try and pincer in towards the scaffolding in the side area. Hampus behind the sandbags. Make it unchecked, but that Molotov will force him out of position, running straight into the face of Haidian. He had a bit of rough performance yesterday, and it seems his woes continue. Hampus now turning his attention towards the site where he's locking it down with ease. Although NiP are conceding a couple of players, they still find themselves a player to the good. And 2 weakened members of the Danes as Stored is caught napping on the bomb. He picked up the only 2 frags that Heroic have managed to muster up, and Nork finishes it off with NiP picking up the pistol.
Yeah, very well done from them. I'll be honest, I'm always a little bit surprised when I see a team Molotov out the sandbags and not wait to clear it. Like, I get that they technically did leave Haidian behind, but if you buy that Molotov, if you invest in that utility, I want to see you wait to get that kill. Like, it's a lot easier if they're just a bit more patient. Then they go into that site taking a 5 versus 4. So maybe a little bit off with the timing. I get they wanted to try and be a little bit quicker getting in there, but they've given NiP a really good opener and also left them with the chance to sort of pincer in the remaining players on the bomb site. So well played by the Swedes. Something to be desired for Heroic. And while this round, it's their economy that's to be desired. They have managed to get an opener, and there's some heavy investment into rifles from the Ninjas. It's going relatively well so far, but they've got to be careful. Nico, he may not be the out-and-out star of this team, but he can definitely pull out some Deeg magic every once in a while. This time, though, he gets pincered, and there's nothing Storm can do. 2-0, the Ninjas convert. They'll retrieve at least 1 extra rifle along the way, although they've still lost a couple in the mix. However, Vince, for this round, doesn't really matter.
Indeed. They missed out on an M4 being dropped across a little bit awkwardly, but as you said, the fact that Heroic can't really put anything into this round in terms of a solid purchase means you're expecting to see these 2 MP9s shred in for some more frags. So it shouldn't end up mattering a great deal. Decent nade for Tessis, catches that one. That's minimal damage. I actually thought that had chunked him at first, the way it bounced into him. But NiP in prime position to fend off a 3-0. Heroic do have a P250 in the mix for Storm. A player that certainly is quite the young talent coming from the Danish region. And it really is a case of so many players that you feel have been undercovered and haven't quite realized their full potential from the Danish region. When you think of the population of Denmark and how many great players they have, it really is quite mind-boggling. And you look at the UK and you just kind of look to the ground in embarrassment, Tom.
All right, Cloud9 got us covered. We're good now. We've gone, you know what? It hasn't worked in the past, but let's get one of the greatest players to ever come from Turkey, stick him in there and get him to carry our boys through. I'm excited. I'm ready for that. But unfortunately, I'll have to wait a little bit longer to see them play. But either way, yeah, it's definitely not fair. I think when it came to Counter-Strike, the world has been a little bit biased towards Denmark with the amount of talent that's come from there. And it's something we mentioned before. Like, you have to remember, a lot of these players were in other decent level teams and overlooked. Like, sure, you could say Storm was probably the star back in the day of the Fragsters roster, but at the same time, the man who was picked up was Refresh. Like, he was the one that came out of that team on top, at least initially, in the early stages. Testas as well was someone who, when it came to that sort of Optic roster, was actually relatively left behind, left out of there. So I'm sure there's a few people with some serious regrets now looking at this team and going, yeah, we actually had most of those players. And when I say some teams, I basically mean North.
Yeah, North have let a lot of opportunities go begging, haven't they? But they are no longer a part of this puzzle. Heroic and NiP stand face to face, and it's NiP that refuse to blink. Even with a lack of a buy compared to the full AKs, they still have the player advantage, but not for much longer. Haidian, it's not with the AWPs having impact, it's with the AK-47. And with those two casualties over on B, it forces away the rotation for Hampus, who himself is pretty low. And Rez tries to dip in behind him, tries to go for the flank. Hampus now holding the line with the MP9 in for 2, using that box to perch up and stilt himself into some victory, but now he is the last man standing. One of these two is Storm, who's on 19 HP. Actually 18, pardon me. And he could be the last one to fall, because Hampus is locking it down. He's on for the ace as well. The Swede is going to come out ahead. And NiP, you speak about magic. That's a rabbit out the hat.
He's got 10 grand. He's just made a bag for himself in this round. This is ridiculous. Like, he gets 1 or 2, and I'm like, okay, you know what? That's pretty impressive. To clutch the 1v2, I don't know what just went wrong for Heroic. They're going to be absolutely kicking themselves, and you sort of saw the reaction of his teammates in the background, and it's warranted. That was a ridiculous play from Hampus, and he mentioned in his interview, maybe I was the problem on Vertigo, he says, acing them with an MP9 in round 4.
Just unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, hey, we've had some cracking games. We've been very fortunate with the matches we've got to cast. I didn't expect this to get so lively this early on. And this is Heroic's choice. They're already 4-0 down. Don't need to push the panic button just yet. But if Hampus is feeling it, there's a lot more threats on the table they have to contend with. Smoke out onto scaffolding. We'll stall away Heroic a little bit longer, but they won't be fully deterred by this. They still push into position. Hampus, 8 kills, 4 assists, 213 ADR. Not a bad start.
Guys, it's pretty decent. I'm not gonna lie. He's also been able to hand an AWP over to Nork as well. So the buy that they've got now going into this round is pretty phenomenal. Even still with 5,000 in the bank ready for any repurchases. This time they're being a little bit more careful. Trying to clear back corner. Now the smoke that's been thrown down is almost to try and bait them into believing there's someone here. You can see in fact Haidian's taking so much time trying to clear it, but luckily Storm is in play. 2 kills for him. Now they don't need to continue this aggression. They can just reset the round, but the problem is the time. 15 seconds available to them. Thorn has to get going now with a Mac 10 in hand, but he's still going to find another kill. And again, it's left onto one man, but the clock is ticking down. Wopski's in with a chance, but Cadian will decapitate him before the round ends. A nice attempt from NiP, and that one smoke they threw over towards the sandbags actually wasted a lot of time. But luckily for Heroic, Storm was about.
Makes the question though, if Storm wasn't about, are we looking at yet another round on NiP? Probably. And I believe they lost, what, 4 players that last round? 3 or 4? So they find themselves in a position where they've just won their first round. Their economy in the bin again. Hampus has been tagged on the cross down to 33. But again, you could also look across to the Swedes. And it's not as if their economy's in great shape. They also survived with 1 player. It was that Hampus ace. So both teams feeling it right now. Incendiary tossed down towards the B stairs. Forces Nico away. He's yet to get on the board in terms of frags, but he'll hope that changes sooner rather than later. And Heroic again, looking to pivot their way up the ramp, which, let's be honest, that is the standard play here on Vertigo. Most often, you are going to see teams look to try and pressure and push in, and Twist just drops from above and neutralizes Nico.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I bet that's a surprise for him. Flying down from above. Look at all the utility they're using every single round just to try and clear out those sandbags. There's not been anybody there since the pistol. But I guess if you make that slip up once, you're going to make sure that that punish never comes in ever again. Heroic loving to play this clock very, very low and just holding players around the other side of the map. Plopsky about to come under fire, but he spotted his opponents. He does so much damage to Cadian and kills off another in the rotation. Twist almost takes down Storm. It's 2 incredibly low players for Heroic. And in fact, Storm just trying to escape, but walking away. Rez will catch him with his back turned. And again, the rotation comes in from Heroic. They should get an afterplant here. The fact is they're low.
Yeah, Cadian is hemorrhaging right now, and his teammate's been taken down. His position now compromised. As he fires off the warning shot, it ends up being, we'll at least get the one. Cadian with a point to prove. Doing a good job so far. Smoke goes down, tickling the bomb. Cadian gets another one. And there is no kit on Hampus. He'd have to stick this fully, and he has stuck it fully. The amount of audacity, the courage to just lock it down, and Cadian never expected it. He was sat there waiting for the push. Oh no, that's so brutal.
Yeah, he played that incredibly well. And that's the thing, when you hear that bomb tapped and then see someone peek through the edge of the smoke, you're sort of expecting that there's no one on the bomb at that point, but Hampus stuck it initially, let his teammate peek, and just managed to get out of there.
Before yesterday, NiP had lost 5 in a row on Vertigo, including a 16-6 loss to Heroic. So it goes to show that near past and distant memory that obviously NiP will be hoping for didn't fare too well for them, but Heroic, very rough start. Again, they took 4 players down though, and the post plant and some round loss bonus accruing for them means they can consistently get these buys into fruition. NiP, very quickly, Twist gets into the box angle, but it won't be any kills going his way. He actually concedes. And with that, Heroic have the advantage for one of the first times in this half.
Yeah, the problem we're witnessing at the moment is NiP, although they're winning rounds, they're never winning any of them cleanly. They're losing players every single time. It's been majority rounds won with, well, literally 1 player alive. So their finances still suck. If anything, Heroic currently with their loss bonus plus bomb plants are actually coming out with better purchases every single time. And the problem with that is now that they're winning all the opening duels, there's, well, basically NiP have to try and fight their way back into rounds. That involves re-aggression, and that's something that's very, very difficult to do against a team like Heroic. It was mentioned in the interview for Barup. He was like, are you going to be able to deal with the craziness? Rez, though, I don't know how he's still alive here. 2 kills, finally put down, attempting a third. Plopsky has rotated into position, but unfortunately, Vince, It needs to be another MP9 clutch if they're going to take this one home.
Yeah, and last time Hampus was standing his ground against weakened oncoming Ts. This time Plopsky has no idea where they are. They have full AKs, plenty of utility, and he's about to walk into the trap that's been set by Storm. AK should win out over the MP9, and even though he did connect a few shots, the superior firepower held fast, and Heroic have got their second, and as a result of their second round, this may actually be a force buy. There are 2 players on $1,400 right now for NiP, so they're eyeing up a double eco, hence the force buy does come into play. So a golden opportunity for Heroic to get themselves neck and neck in this game again.
Yeah, somewhat unfortunate. I guess the argument could be that Heroic probably should have won a couple of the other rounds. But if anything, NiP are kind of being punished for winning those rounds so closely. Their investment is pretty much as bad as it gets. Sure, you've got the FAMAS at least onto Res, but wow. There's a reason we don't really say hero FAMAS very much, Vince, and that's because it's not really that much of a hero gun. Nort is gone already. The wall bangs start things off convincingly, and although they've stacked up this A site, they really don't have much to play with at all. Nice start from Hampus, but ultimately he's still traded out. Well, they're doing a lot of damage, but unfortunately they're not getting any of the rewards for it.
Maybe able to claim those rewards later on. Flashbang, though, forces Twist to change his angle, and in doing so, Borup gets up close with the AK. Plopsky will be setting up for exits, and just going back to that FAMAS point, it is in such a strange shape at the moment. Borup even said in his interview with Frankie that he decides between that and the MP5. That's when you know the FAMAS is pretty trash. When you're actually saying to yourself, you know, the MP5 is not too bad. I mean, Borup is very good with that gun, to be fair to him. So
it's a bit weird. Let's be real. Like, I don't think there's anyone else making that decision. I think that's just him. Like, if that's the case, then maybe you're a little bit odd. But let's be honest, it takes some things that initially considered odd in Counter-Strike to then create a new meta, which everybody hates, and then they fix the thing that was broken initially. So, you know, that's how we fix things in Counter-Strike. So if that gun is as good as Borup claims it to be, then we'll see everybody use it for about 6 months to a year. And then Valve will go, oh, that looks pretty broken. Why didn't anyone say anything? After we screamed at them for months. But either way, unfortunately, it's going to be another sucky buy. There's not even cash for an MP5 this time. That's how dire the economy of NiP is at this point. And the other thing as well is we're not even going to be seeing an AWP or anything in the next round either, because their finances really were reset as hard as humanly possible. So Heroic are just getting a chance to, well, have a nice little fragging session, maybe warm up a bit from some of the earlier rounds where they lost to an MP9, and basically just build up a ridiculous bank. Because even going into this round, if they somehow manage to lose this, they'd be able to rebuy in the next. The fact is they're probably going to keep this one squeaky clean.
Oh, it'd be very surprising if they didn't. It feels like it's only Hampus that could really put a potential wrench in the works. There's 2 USPs alongside it. Rez does actually pick off Haidian, so there you have it. They're going to lose a rifle, bare minimum. Assuming that they do pick up. And Rez has got a second by himself. No grenade damage, no flashes, just a straight up raw USP double frag. That is unreal. And he could be going in for a little bit more. He's down to 3 HP. He's the last man standing, and eventually the AKs do sweep in. But the fact that he got 2 frags out of that round is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, that's definitely cost that never should have been there for Heroic. Luckily, again, playing the T side, you're going to get away with a lot more. You make more money off bomb plants and build up cash a lot easier, with rebuys being lesser. So it's not that much of a punish. They do still have the ability to rebuy again into the next round. And as said, the purchase coming up for NiP is not ideal. They're going to have a FAMAS in the mix. They're going to have some utility missing. And because of that, there's certain angles that they almost have to aggress on. They have to take risks to try and make sure they're not just going to be shut out of rounds. This time, they're looking for ramp control. And hey, it's gone fantastically well. Tesses taken out through the smoke. And now, in fact, the CTs are actually just going to leave one man behind and start rotating players off completely. I like this. Regressing, retaking map control, and not allowing Heroic to have space.
Certainly one of the best ways of dealing with the lack of utility and firepower. You constrict the T's. That's a great flashbang, but Twist using the sandbags. Now Hampus up to the plate in pretty good form with a previous ace, but he will go down. NiP still maintain the player advantage. Nico and Cadian needing to chime together with the bomb down. Nico gets his first kill, but now he needs to rinse and repeat. He needs to hit consistency. Smoke down towards the bomb. Molotov on the ramp affords him a little bit of safe passage, but there's a gap in that smoke, and Nork makes the most of it. NiP, with a very poor buy, have made it work and saved an AWP and an AK on top of it.
Yeah, Nork is just killing people through smoke. So I guess the last one, as you said, had a gap in it at least, but that's some cheeky openers. Again, though, you say, oh yeah, they managed to save this and this. The fact is they still only had 2 players alive, so they haven't had a clean round, and because of that, it's the same scenario. They've come in with a much worse buy than they had initially. I have an MP9 onto Plopsky, who's just tried to do something absolutely ridiculous to kick off the round, and while Heroic were more than ready. Sure, he does a lot of damage onto Nico, but they're going to take that man advantage all day long.
Already equaling their horrific loss to Heroic in the past on Vertigo on NiP, with a 6th round being posted up early doors. A lot of it off the back of that phenomenal 4-0 start. Rez thinking of going back in for a second peek. Smokes it down, but catching Burp with a nade out. Will get instantly traded, though. But he did also see the bomb drop down, so that will give his teammates an idea as to what's coming up. Twist holding the line. He needs to have a big round, but Tessis instantly evaporates him with the AK. And in that 2-on-4, even though 2 players sub 10 HP, you still favor Heroic to close the door on this round. Smokes and Molotovs being tossed in with flashbangs. Hampus gets the drop. That's the bomb that goes down with him. 5 HP for Hampus, and Heroic pull the plug, but someone still needs to pick up the bomb.
What's going on? This is such a confusing way to play the round. Like, Nico's just going all the way around, I guess. They've only got 15 seconds, Vince. As long as they don't die, NiP have won this. They're trying to pincer in from multiple angles. This is so risky, and Nico knows he has to run at this point. It's all into the 1v1. Nork just has to escape. Is there time for the plant? I'm not sure there is. It's going to be ridiculously close and not quite enough for Cadian. A really bold call from the Heroic side, and the Danes have let things slip.
Mate, I'm somewhat speechless. It's so mind-blowing. There was like 28 seconds left when they went for that rotation. I was just saying that you expect them to convert even with 2 players. Look, it was what, a 2v4?
Yep.
That's unreal.
Also, to point out that this is another round where NiP only have 1 player surviving. I think we're going to have to get a stat for that at the end of the map. That is ridiculous, though, that 3 of their players were all on 72 assists going into this match. So, talking about team synergy, I don't think you can do any better than that.
Yeah, there was some synergy between Cadian and Nork as well with the stats, the head-to-head. And speaking of which, it's Nork that goes on to Cadian. I think they had identical kills and nearly identical deaths. The ADR was slightly in favor of Cadian, though. But certainly not in that trade. Now, if NiP could finally hold on and get a clear-cut, squeaky clean round, then they could start to build up a bank balance, and things get a little bit more sketchy and dicey for Heroic. Still trailed by 3, but they've lost the first player. Will be boosting up with Storm, taking point, gap in the smoke, tries to make the most of it, but he is fended off by Hampus with his M4. It will be a labored attempt. They switch across for the AWP now, and Nork stands his ground alongside Hampus. Heroic in trouble again, and they also have to deal and contend with a flank that's coming round from Twist. All they have to do is stay alive on the site, and Twist will do the rest. It's unlikely anybody checks for this rotation, and here come the Jaws chomping down on Heroic. It's a double spray on Twist, and his head will be spinning with all the threats he has to deal with. Twist comes in for a third. I said they needed to get a clean round. Well, they've picked it off. Not a single casualty.
I do wonder if that Borup interview that we saw earlier might be something he lives to regret. He said the Casper's going to be ready for what they have for us. Well, so far that's not been the case. We've seen lots of successful aggressive pushes coming out from NiP, and not just one time either. There's been rotations where they take the initial map control and then fall back and reposition elsewhere. It's been a really impressive CT start from them, and sure, they've got some clutches along the way. I'm not going to deny the fact that this could easily be a match in either team's favor. Like, even though it's so ridiculously close, if you win 3 or 4 1v1s, I don't think I can favor you heavily. I'm just impressed that they're able to go so toe. But they get absolutely nothing. And while it's finally a clean round coming out from the side of NiP, Heroic, it was close. It was a battle within the early stages. But now we're looking at a 10-4, potentially even 11-4 half for NiP. You have to start to look at the mistakes that have been made.
Hampus is having a worldie of a performance. 15 kills and 8 assists. 129 ADR, and he goes in again. Past the smoke, you can see the confidence is coursing through him. Bypassing one of the players on the ramp, and he will clean up with 2. But Haidian and Borup have both found themselves kills alongside it. There's the MP5 that we were touching on earlier. And now you can trade up to an M4. That being said, though, familiar territory again, Tom. They trail by a player.
Yeah, it must be frustrating at this point. Hampus, back-to-back rounds, back-to-back aggressive, risky plays. Well, back-to-back successes. Still, though, we know how good Heroic are at turning the tide. There's so much depth within this roster. It's something that's been mentioned many a time. The 2 players remaining, though, have had a bit of a quiet performance thus far. But there's always time for change. Time for a step up. Nork, he's been great. It's good to see him. Plopsky's just waiting. He's dropped the bomb. Sure, there's plenty of time, but Nico will have to double his kills in 1 round if he's going to be able to turn this back and give his side a 5th. The first isn't even going to go his way. It's 11-4. NiP, they've had some close rounds, but they've come out massively on top and now look to close in the second half.
last time Heroic and NiP met on Vertigo, it was a bloodbath, and it was the Danes that had their hand raised high. But how things have changed in the last few months. It's NiP, it's the Swedes that have a commanding lead, 11-4, and now they jump across to the T side that many would argue is actually the easier of the two. We'll have to see if Heroic can withstand this, or if they will get barreled out. Twist taking a quick fight against Cadian, but he comes out second best. And the perfect start for Heroic, but they need to convert this.
Yeah, that's for sure. We know that Heroic can get themselves out of tricky situations. They've got a fantastic in-game leader for that sort of thing. But they need this pistol, and that's a little bit dicey. Nork and Hampus have managed to get away with a positive trade, although Storm in a good position. Lead this into a 3-on-2. In fact, make that just one. It's all left on Toplopsky. There hasn't really been a weak link to this NiP roster so far. Everybody performing. Plenty of clutches going their way. Can this man pull off another?
Does have the bomb. And we'll get the first 1v1 trade going in his favor. 45 seconds now spilling out onto the side. Checks his angles, but Borup's USP is on point. Heroic do survive by the skin of their teeth, and now they'll look to try and put some more rounds back to back and build up that economy, but that would have been a bit of a sketchy one. Had Borup have died, it would have been down to a one-on-one.
Yeah, I think the attempted switch to triple burst jumping through the air headshot would have been quite tilting if he had died to it, but you know, it happened. In fact, if that had happened, it wouldn't even be the most BS thing we've seen this tournament so far. So, you know, I'm almost ready for it at this point. NiP not going to be investing much into this at all. You see Hampus getting out a Deeg in an attempt to try and do some damage, remove some extra weaponry. Of course, that can just be picked up once he dies, and it now lands in Nork's hand. Will it be the cursed Eagle, or is anybody actually going to manage a frag? It's not looking great. In fact, Storm has now made his way past 100 ADR. 19 kills already. And he has been one of the shining lights for this squad. Twist even getting a kill onto Cadian is something extra for the next round. Will force a rebuy, which I don't think NiP will be too unhappy about at all. In fact, Storm is actually the top fragger in the server right now. That's kind of mental considering how this game has gone so far.
No, absolutely. He has been consistently very solid on the side of Heroic. In those rounds where they were surviving with 1 or 2, Storm was having huge impact. And they touched it on the desk. He's a very versatile player. Now he's using the SMG, ripping to the far side of the B stairs, dropping on Hampus. Smoke deployed, allows Storm a chance to relocate again, get up close with that SMG, keeping his angles incognito, as unpredictable as possible. Something he discussed about in that interview with Borup. And now Cadian getting one, aggression downstairs, catching the T's unaware, but Rez stands his ground, and now NiP have the advantage. Heroic hot off the back of winning the pistol. The very real possibility of collapsing on only the second hurdle.
This has been such a scrappy round, like both teams catching our players in odd positions, leaving lurkers around different positions on the map. Like, this is definitely not the most structured game of Counter-Strike we've ever seen, but given us some decent highlights. The problem now is whether or not Heroic can actually do anything if this comes down to a retake. They've used their last piece of utility to try and deny a bomb plant and give them some extra space. Currently the top and bottom fragger for their side, looking to try and combine, and Plopsky again. We see this play so often over the top of the smoke. He's only going to get one, but it doesn't matter. Rez is there to back him up. NiP are straight back on the board. And for Heroic, this is an odd situation to be in. Because Storm has enough for an AWP. Some of the other players barely have enough for pistol and armor.
Yeah, I almost feel like the way that NiP are playing here, and AWP may not be the greatest of decisions because it's a very mobile approach that the T's are having, but Cadian has gone for it. He's decided to pull the trigger. It will be a glass cannon, I believe, as a tactical timeout has been called. So for me, Tom, I don't want to say it's over if they lose this round, but they're going to be in such bad shape that they'll probably wish it was. They are in dire straits right now. They desperately need a W.
Yeah, the thing is, this is the sort of round where Cadian normally gets a 4K. Like that's where we've seen some of these crazy comebacks from Heroic. Is like a lot of the time when things are going bad, you see him having to focus on other people's game other than his own, and then every once in a while he does something like this where he just bangs out an AWP. The problem being he's not actually the one to take the fight this time. Nico tries to support, he gets flashed, and while for Rez, that's a fairly easy frag to start things off. Not the sort of start that Heroic were looking for. And then the problem is, once you lose this ramp control, the AWP definitely loses a lot of its value, especially when you're playing Glass Cannon. It's not like it's that easy to play any of these other angles because you have to think about it. You can't go near sandbags. That's constantly naded. If you don't have armor, you can't play there. You can't really play towards the back of the site because, again, that's a common Molotov spot that will be cleared. So they're trying to re-aggress elsewhere. They're trying to take control of other portions of the map. What this does mean, however, is if the T's just walk into A, this round is over.
Yeah, I almost feel like Heroic is setting up for a save. It's like that gamble stack that we talk about on maps like Dust. You push together. If it doesn't work out, you just save. No problems. But actually, they are coming back into this. This is really surprising to me, Tom, because they moved themselves out of the firing line. They gave up the site, and they went back in again. And this indecision has cost two of them their lives. They at least do pull back with the AWP and M4, which were the more expensive of the options. But this round is done. And NiP again are making it work. And he did touch on a really key moment that Cadian wanted to get aggressive on ramp, but there was an exquisite flashbang that landed right in his face. And in doing so, forced him back. And I completely agree with the sentiment that after they lost ramp control, it almost felt like the round went with it, to be honest, Tom. It didn't seem like Heroic were ever in that round afterwards.
Yeah, like obviously we know that Cadian can switch up on the fly, but when you don't have many pieces to play with, when you're basically just working with pawns, it becomes very, very difficult to try and actually outmaneuver your opponent who is sat with a full belt of utility and can just set up. So I like what they did initially. Like, okay, we've sort of failed in taking ramp. Let's try and reposition to another spot where the AWP will be able to work the pick. What I'm not the biggest fan of is you've made that gamble. You've taken your risk, and then it's almost like at the last second you've gone, oh, no, I actually meant red. And it's like, well, once the ball's rolling, it's a little bit too late.
Right, exactly. They could have had extra Kevlar. They could have had an extra weapon. As it stands, though, Cadian is holding B alone, and so far, that will yield some results. But they need to build a lot off the back of that, because elsewhere they are vulnerable. Plopsky, a dicey smoke walking past the USP wielding player, but now here's the noise and he collapses down with the AK. Thorn also getting one. Plopsky is all alone. He's being encircled, and that will be an assault rifle. It now trades back in favor of Heroic, and Teslas can pick that up. Heroic have got it done. One of the strangest buys, one of the strangest rounds, but they've made it work.
That was really peculiar. Okay, the openers from Cadian, the kills he gets. I kind of expected that last round. He's done it a little bit later. That's absolutely fine. The thing that's weird is just how Plopsky manages to get completely behind them and unfortunately doesn't kill the man with the rifle. I think if he gets the man with the rifle, that round probably goes in their favor. Then Down gets a double, and that's a very different story. The pace change, though, this could be a difference maker here. Twist has just picked up 2 kills with a Tech 9. And well, now they're trying to find a way to get past Tessus and give them access to this B side, but instead they push into him with the bomb. He sprayed wildly, and Twist has found an AWP and found his 3rd kill of the round. There are times where Twist goes off the chains, becomes the best player in the server, and there is very little you can do. I think we might have just hit that moment, Vince.
Man, there is something about Swedes and Tech 9s. I don't know what to tell you. It must be in the DNA. Every Swedish player just somehow is a madman with a Tech 9, and Twist just round the corner, taking off multiple heads. Just blitzkrieg, but you saw Cadian get caught. This is the moment here. Cadian went to peak middle. There was a nade and a flashbang that forced him away. Then he gets caught in transition, and the rest is history. Twist, excellent work, picking up the AWP, using it against the oncoming CTs, and look at the effect it has, Tom. We're in this brutal position again with Heroic hanging by a thread.
Well, Cadian again. It's another opener. He's definitely having impact with the AWP. The problem is they're having to take such risks elsewhere. Storm trying to catch the ninjas with their pants down, and unfortunately, what you don't realize is they sleep in pajamas. with the remaining CTs left without much. Somehow Tessus has managed to kill here. The repeak is unadvised. I'm not sure how he was planning to get away with that one, but he does set up Barup for the re-aggression. Somehow these rounds just seem to work out wonderfully for them, and Barup, I think he's just about going to escape this. It's now left on to Nork as Twist goes down as well, and after a round one with sheer pace and flair, now a bit of a scare for the Ninjas, who, sure, their money's not bad, but they don't want to just be handing all this weaponry over.
Certainly not. The good news is that the second CT wasn't there to pick up a secondary AWP. That being said, they had two AWPs last round. They got rushed. Maybe they'll think twice of picking a second one up anyway. They wouldn't be able to afford it even if they wanted. NiP can also buy. This feels like a war of attrition, Tom. It's just who is going to give up first? Who's going to fatigue first? Now, you would obviously say that NiP have a bit of extra gas in the tank purely off the basis that they're 14-8 in the lead. But their economy is starting to dwindle again somewhat. Flashes and smokes being exchanged. Ramp has consistently been the battleground that both teams have elected to put their flag on. But more often than not, it has been the Swedish flag still raised come the end of these rounds. And now the smoke begins to fade, as will Tessus. Hampus gets the entry and he backs away. And that's a huge entry. That keeps multiple CTs interested, while the bulk of NiP push on B. They still haven't fully funneled their way out onto the site. They've been stalled a little bit of time by Storn's smoke and some good utilities being tossed down into the range of the CTs. Flashbang is good. Storn caught a glimpse of a player dodging into him just before the flash detonated. That would be Rez, who still stands with only 8 HP to his name. Haidian still trying to battle away into this site. The bomb hasn't been planted just yet, but will be momentarily. And there's no high ordnance. There's no incendiaries to deal with these threats that are posted up close in the form of Rez. A lot of damage to Nork, who can now use that box as his sanctuary. And Heroic need to make a split-second decision. Do we go in and try and retake, or do we back out and save? They will be going for it, and so far, they're paying with it in blood. So many T's are being scattered in the wind, but now Twist will evaporate and erode the CT threat. 7 map points for NiP.
A really nice try from Nico, but unfortunately the round was already over, I feel, once the T's managed to take control of the site. And it almost seems like they've taken a little bit from the Fnatic playbook of just like, oh, smoke, you say? No, I don't see smokes. It's a couple of times now where Hampus has been making like all-in plays, and they've worked almost every single time. It doesn't seem like they're ready for this level of aggression coming out of him, even though it was something mentioned previously by the desk. Once again, a complete change of pace, a blast in towards this site. We had Haidian saying, well, these sort of rounds, they're a risk, but if they work, it ends the game. And that's exactly what NiP have gone for. A faster push into this site, leaving just 2 players standing. It's on to Storm to try and save them, Vince, and I can't say I believe.
He has been the top fragger for the bulk of this map, even after they got blitzed in the first half, but now his position is known, and there's Twist with the AK. Revenge has been served, and I'm sure it's a sweet meal for NiP, as they will turn the knife into Heroic.
Yeah, no, a fantastic performance, and on their opponent's map choice as well. Nonetheless, we are going to be off to a break, and then the desk will be back to break this one down for you.
With the right CPU, you can turn any game from familiar to phenomenal. Unleash the potential in all your gaming with Intel 10th Gen processors. With its optimal balance of threads, cores, and frequency to deliver elite real-world performance, only Intel can bring Marvel's Avengers to life with in-game PC optimizations. Supercharge your Marvel's Avengers experience with Intel Core i5, i7, and i9 processors.
We find ourselves on Vertigo to kick this series off, where the Ninjas would boot Heroic over the edge, kicking and screaming. The Danes map pick, but the Swedes proved a dominant force and move us on to our next destination of Train. Joining me to break this stop down, however, Maui and Potter. And Potter, we heard from Hampus before this very map that he thought he might have been a problem on Vertigo in the past, but it is an entirely different story coming into this. He looked so dominant.
He did look so dominant, and I guess the type of problems that Hampus was having is, I don't even know, because he looked so comfortable on this map, and it's kind of what we were talking about in the pre-show. He's so slippery. Whether he's on the defense or the attacking side, you saw how many times he was able to get past the Heroic attacking members and kill them from there, get a multi-kill for himself, even on the T side of things, slipping past once again, finding all the right holes. And man, he's got 112 ADR as the in-game leader for NiP. Heroic side, sure, they had some rounds where they were swinging back, but I gotta say, for me, it definitely looked like NiP were, they were playing checkers or chess, and Heroic were playing the opposite.
Yeah, it was incredibly dominant from NiP. And interestingly enough, Maui, we heard from the Ninjas before we came into the game, again saying that they thought Heroic had one of the best CT sides on this map. But NiP looked to have the better one here today. What was working so well for them in that first half?
Yeah, a lot of that A ramp control was working out incredibly well for NiP. Really, any sort of kind of gimmicky play that Heroic were going for, the peaks that they were looking for, NiP was just not giving them those kinds of advantages. Or if they did, they had very good responses, just always a refrag, someone that's in position to trade off of them. And we could see in the second half the way that Haidian's team wanted to play that A ramp, a little bit more individual at times. Tessa's getting killed because he's on the ramp, just trying to sit behind a smoke. And there's no real refrag potential. So I'm not going to say that's really sloppy or anything like that, because sometimes that's just Heroic's game plan. They want to look for those types of kills because they're used to finding them. And what NiP does so well is they mitigate those sort of kind of gimmicky plays. If you look for some kind of cheeky pick here or there, NiP just seemed absolutely ready for it.
Yeah, they did indeed. And of course, they will be ready for our next map being Train, as this is the Swedes map pick coming into this. I'm wondering, Potter, from your perspective, these two teams, they're no strangers to this map. What are we thinking coming into this one?
They're definitely not any strangers. And, you know, I like the fact that Heroic, at least for this map, they're going to have a different look. You know, Testis, as we mentioned, he didn't have the greatest looks or opportunities on this Vertigo. Moving on to Train side of things, especially because I imagine they're going to be starting T side here first, that should give Testis a lot more room to work with, right? A lot of flash plays. We know how fast-paced Heroic can be on the T side of things on Train. So I think Testis, he should be able to have those feel-good rounds for himself where he just gets a multi-kill on completely blind targets and be able to get himself into this series.
Well, the pressure is on for the Danes. It is do or die time here at DreamHack Open Fall, and we'll find out how exactly it will be panning out after this.
Train is up next, and this could be the final stop, the final destination, if Heroic are not careful. This, the choice of NiP, a map, as they mentioned on the desk, neither of these teams are strangers on, and I think this could be a really close affair, Tom, because surely Heroic don't slip that hard again.
Yeah, I feel like if you remove a lot of the clutch situations in the early rounds for NiP, this could have been a much closer first map, but the problem was they just seemed to win every single one, and you could see the confidence brewing. Like it was mentioned again on the desk that Hampus is just able to get away with so much. Now on Train, if that's a similar circumstance, that's a huge problem, because this is a map, historically the T side is quite a rough one, because it's very almost dictated where you're going to be pushing, a lot of very difficult entry points, and you need your players to be on form when going onto the T side, which is where I imagine NiP are going to be kicking off their campaign. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do on this one. Like, let's be real, Heroic are definitely a team that can reset and come back into these sort of matches, so we definitely can't count the Danes out just yet.
No, that's a very good point. I think often we see a pretty brutal first map and we think, oh, you know, the mentality and can they bounce back and all these kinds of things. Well, we know that Heroic can, and they have invariably. Already in this very tournament, they've done it. So they can easily bounce back. Haidian's a very uplifting, positive kind of guy. Clearly the rest of Heroic really do follow him to their demise sometimes, but sometimes to victory too. And we'll have to see if Train proves to be a successful story and we can get that all-important third overpass again. We had it yesterday. We had a really fun experience with Astralis and Vitality going at it. It would be great to see it again, but obviously NiP will want to put this to bed as soon as possible.
Already is NiP kicking things off on the T side. A 3-man B stack in the early rounds. A 2-man B stack coming out from the side of Heroic. Yeah, Haidian's dead within the first few seconds. Now, it seems like him being the information player normally means that there's not anybody else on this side. So they might not be expecting Storm to be here. And well, that's not a man you want to leave unchecked.
Borup can hear so many footsteps all around him now. He could come and deny the bomb plant. He's a little bit too late, but still takes the head off of both Hampus Res and now Plopsky. Borup feeling it. They need a player to really step up, and Borup's gone in for 4. A perfect retake. Borup take a bow. That was beautiful to watch.
Yeah, that was my mistake. It was Borup on the site, and then this is what I'm talking about. Like, as they walk in, because Haidian's in such an aggressive position, he looks like the spotter, right, Vince? You're like, okay, if there's a man spotting this far back, that probably means they had an A site stack, because if you've got that much information, why would you have extra players on B? So Borup's position goes completely unchecked because of that, and well, he may not have had the best first map, but he has absolutely styled on them in the first round of the second.
I was watching him the whole time and it caught me off guard. I don't even want to think of what NiP were thinking as the bullets passed between their eyes. Just unreal flicks across the board. I'm not sure how Testis didn't take more damage from that grenade. It looked like it landed right on him, but Haidian taking the first of the round. Could be more to follow as Thorn is going to get flashed in. Perfect flashbang and follow-up. We asked the question, and we kind of answered it too. It was more rhetorical in nature that Heroic can indeed reset after getting battered in the first map, and it doesn't get too much better than this. Clean sweep. Plopsky, the only player that has mounted up any kind of resurgence, any kind of retaliation from the Swedes. Still healthy and has Nork with a scout, but a HE lands on top of him, and Nico will be striking from above, leaving Nork, a player that has so much ability, so much talent. And he does have control of the bomb. Whether he can thread some of the eyes of the needles or not is yet to be seen, and Haidian will silence him. Heroic off to a 2-0 lead.
So there was an interview earlier in the day that if people tuned in a little bit late, they might have missed. The question was asked by Frankie of like, what's the perfect teammate? Like, that's what they were asking. And Haidian sort of talked about like people who list and all this stuff. The answer's Borup. The answer is Borup. He gets a 4K in the pistol round, drops an AWP and picks up an MP9. Like, that's a teammate that if you play like pugs or matchmaking, they don't exist There's no one like that. Like, that is a selfless act. Like, you carry the pistol around and then hand an AWP over to your in-game leader. Not something you normally see in a second round whatsoever, mainly because of the cost and also the risk if they do go for some pistols. But clearly Heroic were ready for some sort of force buy in the last round. And, well, you know what? They kept it pretty damn clean. Their money's now going to be building, and that's what you need on a map like Train. Like, Train is one that not only is famous for his AWPing, double AWPs are very common, but also you need that early utility for A main and B. Like, you need to be able to deny those pushes. That's why you can see one player play the B site so often, because of the incendiaries and smokes they can hold for the ramp. And also, that A main aggression that comes out from teams so regularly, there's a reason there's a spot called Olov, and that's because he used to jump out there every single round.
Mentioned Borup, and he is on a warpath. It's 4 kills again. Sure, it's against an eco, but his aim was crisp, and he's got an ace on top of it. He's also such a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, always smiling and laughing. So in that interview with Frankie, had a pretty interesting insight to Borup as well when he was asked the question of, like, you know, are you guys going to be able to take it on Vertigo? He said, I have full faith in Haidian. He's an unpredictable IGL. He'll keep us on the path. It didn't end up working out, but it goes to show you that he has full confidence in his IGL. And doesn't seem like he has any kind of ego or any shortcomings just yet. Great start for Heroic though here, Tom, and this is what I was hoping to see.
Yeah, and it's a scary one at that, because although you mentioned like shortcomings, the one thing with Borup is a lot of the time he is taking that supportive role. So you're not going to see him top fragging too often and like getting these crazy stats. The fact that he's helped his team get the first couple of rounds, that adds real depth to this Heroic roster. It gives other players the chance to free things up, but I love that. The bait jump pulls in Haidian, and Nork will slam him straight into the ground. A great start for the Ninjas. Something that can be quite difficult on this map in general is finding those opening picks. Now, Tessus got very, very close. He's going to have to try and run out of there, but will make it into the smoke. However, it means he can't really stay within pop anymore, and they're going to have to try and reposition now in this round.
We saw NiP leading pretty much the entirety of Vertigo. We haven't really seen what they can do when they're up against it, when the pressure is being applied. Storn, pixel perfect aim onto Hampus, doesn't want to overextend, knowing that main additionally is vulnerable. He may get forced down. Borup in the pop dog, changing up his angles. Nico now winning a trade. All the individual duels going the way of Heroic up until Nork puts the bullet onto Tessus. But there's only 15 seconds left. And NiP will try and scurry away in the form of Nork to save. So Heroic off to an even better start now. They move 4-0 ahead. And I'm not sure that Nork will actually hold on to this AWP. Money is good for Heroic. They can justify throwing in some guns, but Nork splatters Borup in midair. He does hold on to the AWP, and they could feasibly get a buy behind this, but it still won't be ideal.
Yeah, the problem with these sort of scenarios is the next round will likely be a problem if they don't invest. Like, sure, if they get a bomb plant, then Nork could be able to drop, and it really isn't that much of a problem at all. Interesting. Hampus' best Vertigo map on NiP until today was a +2. To be fair, since he's been in NiP, it's been a map that, as he sort of said, when he joined, everything went downhill, and they've had a big rework on it. But it's good to see, like, especially with their current map pool. They've got quite a few maps they're happy to play, but I would say, again, we're looking at home maps, and there aren't too many that I would say are prominent. Like, they like to pick Train, they like to throw an overpass in there, but there's not one where I would think, oh, they're definitely going to win that. If they can add Vertigo in, they've already taken down a team like Heroic, who, as we've said, have been one of the teams that have played it a significant amount over the last few months. That could be a pretty big addition to their map pool, so good signs for the Ninjas. Hey, top 4 at this tournament already. I don't think too many people would have necessarily predicted that with just bringing Nork back. They got a lot to do in this one. A good start, and while Storn is eventually going to trade things back to keep things even for now, his secondary AWP is definitely something to be feared. I think it's even arguable that at times it's more deadly than the primary AWP.
I think it's a fair assessment. Absolutely. Definitely isn't a weakness in that double AWP. And just to put the Hampus stat into context, he was +7 against Heroic in the first map, 112 ADR and a 1.53 rating. Not too shabby, especially considering that he was the player that stood tall on the B site with the MP9 to get an ace against oncoming AK-47s, and that really set the first half in motion. The first half here, though, has been all the way of the Danes. This is the best opportunity that NiP have had. A 3-on-3 with the HP advantage, but that grenade is money. Lands onto Twist and softens him up to 39. Counter flashes are good. Affords Plopsky the chance to get across onto the site and go for the plant, but his teammate has been taken down in the form of Nork, and now Twist. And Plopsky has to peek out, not sure if he's getting pushed upon or being flanked, and Storm will chomp down on him. These two AWPs are doing so much damage.
Yeah, this is something that I think a lot of teams will really want to deny when playing up against a roster like Heroic. Like, we know that Haidian can put up some ridiculous numbers at times, and Storm, well, he's the star of the show. You're not going to doubt him. The fact that they've been able to get an AWP in since round 2, courtesy of Brup, it's a pretty terrifying prospect, and the money is still looking pretty damn good for the side of Heroic. And interestingly, on the other side, they're still going to invest into this round. I personally would have liked to see them go for a slightly lighter buy, but it looks like they're just going to go for a pace change. A fast push in towards the A site, at least for Rez. Unfortunately for him, it's more AWPs.
Yeah, and even more unfortunately, Haidian had the best possible spawn, I think, for a mid-peak. So even though he jumped out, it was straight into an AWP's hand. Storm using that smoke, couple of gaps in there, Hampus with an important counter frag. And you hit the nail on the head, mixing up the pace, getting aggro, but have a look at that utility bar. Collectively, they have one flash. They have to do so much with so little. Against two AWPs, one way of mitigating the AWP prowess is having smokes down, having flashes in their eyes, blinding them. Getting up close and cutting off the angles. That's exactly what Hampus does. It's Nico that gets put down. Haidian jumping on top of the spools, converts, and now Tessis shows his hand from top dog, but Twist does counteract for his first kill. Uncharacteristic slow start, but Storm, if he gets slow peaked, he will be the favorite to take down this frag. There are some footsteps and now an incendiary in the face of Twist, so he knows at least one player's to his left-hand side, and Haidian goes in on Plopsky. They don't realize, though, that Twist is still here. In the Ivy, they go back to check it again. The timing may work against Twist. If he slow peeks, he's a dead man, and Haidian pulls the trigger. NiP put down again.
They can't beat the AWPs. They can't even get close to them. Like, this round, I think, began and ended with Hampus. Like, again, he's making plays that he really shouldn't be getting away with. Like, sneaking out, like, this is such a common play. And he manages to catch 2 kills. I'm like, you know what? Considering they had no utility, that's really impressive. The problem is, then it just comes back down to pick play, and that's where Heroic have been winning every single individual duel. These two have been dominating. We're going to sound like a broken record at this point, but they need a counter for the AWP. This round at least, well, I was going to say they haven't invested, but some of them have. Hampus goes for a hero AK, gets instantly taken down, but it might be a couple of hero Deegs. They managed to find some extra weaponry. Nork even has an AWP. Now, it's still not a good situation, but it's a workable one.
Nico's played this so patiently, though. They were not anticipating a player up close to barrel the gun around the corner. Nork, though, a little bit too quick on the trigger, and that will cost him dearly. And Heroic already off to a 7-0 scoreline. Complete role reversal from Vertigo, Tom. How things have changed.
What is with Danish teams and just these like ridiculous starts? So we watched this yesterday when we saw Astralis just completely blow out Vitality on map number 2. Or map number 1, sorry. And then lose the next 2. Heroic didn't really perform that well in the last map. And I've started off with this. And you can see, again, it's the same as what we said for NiP in the last map. It's the confidence change. Look at the angles Haidian is currently holding. This is as bold as it gets. He needs his teammates to try and hold on to Pop. If anything, if the player on Pop, Tessus, dies, they basically lose this round. Instead, they've lost the Ivy player. Cadian's still committed. He has absolutely no fear, it seems, and they've almost lost the B-sides down to Nico. Cadian's still pushing in, and eventually he's going to get punished.
Understandable why he'd go aggressive, though, with two of his teammates having been dealt with. And now Tessus, awkward position. T's looking towards him. They seem to realize that he's here. Can see, but Plopsky staring down the ramp, and he's being pinted in from Hampus. Tessus, it's been nice knowing you, but it's all over. 7-1. NiP have got themselves around finally, but what they desperately need is consistency, and Heroic will be straight back in with another bye, probably another double AWP round.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that that round was won via a team ace for NiP, because that was just one by one different jewels being handed to them by Heroic. And the fact is, you can't really blame Heroic too much in that scenario because everything has been working for them so far. So they're going to take these riskier plays. They're going to try and shut NiP out of this game completely. I imagine now we're going to see more of a standard round coming out from them. And in fact, it does involve more aggression. They've got an initial take onto Ivy. Haidian looking to try and pressure that position once again. In the meantime, there's going to be a lot of utility being invested to try and get rid of Tessus out of Pop. It looked like they're about to dunk some nades over the top. Downs just hit a worldie of a shot while they're at it. And unfortunately, the nades, I like the idea, but I don't think the Molotov quite forced him as far back as they would have liked.
And losing Twist on Ivy is certainly going to be a bit of a detrimental moment in the round where NiP can't really force him out and try and draw some rotations. So now it will have to be blunt force trauma instead. They'll have to brutalize their way out onto the A side. You feel like from these positions that are being attained down in Pop Dog, they have got rid of Tessus, but that's really only the first hurdle they've navigated over. There's a ton more to deal with. 35 seconds. Tessus now, different angle. Had a very slow first map, but it's starting to wake up. Dink on Plopsky. He is low. Hampus finished off. I said they needed consistency, but the only constant in this map has been NiP getting absolutely demolished. Nork now with 15 seconds. We've been here before, maybe thinking about the possibility of saving, but he gets pushed out through the smoke, and it's Tessus who lands a second and picks up that double AWP once more.
Right, it seems like we took a slight deviation from our initial path, but yeah, this what do you even do against something like that? I saw it from the other point of view, and I was like, yeah, that does seem like a ridiculous shot, but you know what? It looks even better from his point of view. Hampus killed Tessus 8 times without replying, and Twist did the same to Nico on Vertigo. Yeah, I was definitely thinking that Tessus, he had a uncharacteristically quiet game, and in fact, he's having one right now. It just doesn't really matter. I don't think Pop pressure has been something NiP have put too much into, other than throwing utility down there, and it seems on the other side of things, they're constantly putting pressure onto the likes of Cadian and Storn, and they've come out with flying colors. Also, Barup obviously having 2 4K rounds has put him quite far up the board. But yeah, another timeout. No real surprises there, Vince. When you're getting banged this hard, you do need a little bit of a break. I'm expecting, though, that if NiP can even get like sort of 5 rounds here, it's not over. Like, that's the thing with Train. Like, it's definitely the map where you see the most CT-sided halves. In fact, I would say at the moment it's definitely the most CT-sided map that we currently have in Counter-Strike. So, although this looks very, very bad for the Ninjas, if they can get to 5, I don't think they're out.
I'd agree, but it doesn't look like they were getting around anytime soon. The grenade damage, so very devastating. Hampus down to 9. AWP pick onto Plopsky. And this is right off the back of a tactical timeout. You know, it's like a detoxing period. You get all of the troops on the same page, and then instantly those pages get ripped out the book. And it's the same script again.
Oh, no.
Cadian spins around, pivots in for another one. And NiP just can't catch a break, Tom. Like, at this point, just throw in the towel, guys. This is too brutal to watch.
getting absolutely slaughtered. I'd love to see them try and put a little bit more pressure on the B site. Like, sure, Nico's been doing a pretty good job, but I want to see them try and just get away from this double AWP setup. We haven't seen a proper rush in that direction. We haven't even seen like a proper deep take to allow them to get into after plant positions. Mostly, we've only seen those sort of plays when they've had pistols, which I think a lot of teams do sometimes when things aren't working. They'll try something in a round where they only have pistols. They go, oh, that didn't work. And in the back of the mind, it's like, oh, yeah, B hasn't been working. So then they just continue to bombard this A site. And, well, it hasn't been going great. A rifle this time for Storm in a perfect position. He's just going to destroy them. Bomb dropped. Round done. It's all about damage.
Well, they at least get one, but it feels like a consolation kill more than anything else. Nearly a second onto Storm, who's got a 4K. A 3-man spray onto Ivy. And Rez, the only thing that separates Storm and an ace. He doesn't have the bomb, so he has to traverse his way back over onto the Ivy side of the map. Obviously, he wants to die before time. He doesn't want to be saving and holding on to a Deagle and Kevlar when they could have a goodbye into the next one. So he will go in for this. We will see more bloodshed. Maybe he can make this a costly round. Hell, maybe even he can pull off a play to get NiP motivated, inspired, back into this. We've seen some absolutely ridiculous 1v4 clutches. Mainly from Zai Wu, of course. And now Rez, there's the first. Position now tenable. Heroic know this. They scramble into action. Rez, there's another one. Takes the head off with Nico. Now begins to believe. He knows where Cadian is. That no-scope is something sublime. But he doesn't know where Borup currently resides. 20 seconds to play with. Rez already with a 3K. Looking, hunting for his prey. Tries to plant in amongst the smoke, but there is Borup to deny him. It's such a nice try. You can see a bit of a grimace on his face. He knows it was so close, yet so far.
The second and third kill were just unbelievable. It didn't even look like he stopped running for the no-scope. Oh, he wasn't even in the smoke. I wondered why that kill was so easy for Borup. Oh, that's heartbreaking. A very, very nice try. NT's definitely making it into the chat, but unfortunately, it might not matter. Now, it's the same play from Hampus. I think he's got away with this, I want to say once, where he gets 2 kills and they still lost the round. Evidently, they have only won 1 round. This stack, though, from Heroic is a complete change. They have not done this just yet. They're still being dynamic. Tessus even expects him. I think Hampus has become way too predictable, and Heroic have been anything but. It's still going to be a decent trade for them, but then Cadian backs things up with some extra utility, even throwing the HE into upper, which is going to catch Nork, who's currently armorless. Even still, though, the IGL have to be a little bit careful not to let this one slip.
Could be a fast track back into the half. As we said before, 5 rounds would be good enough. Maybe even 4 and a squeak. And Cadian missing the shot into ramp, albeit through smoke. We can let him off for that one. But there is a player behind the spools. That will be Tessis. AK, as a flashbang comes out, Nork now posted up on the catwalk, delivers the fatal blow into Cadian. Twist will mitigate this very position as a result of pushing past the train. But it's all about that second player. Nork has the bomb under control, and now Tessis shows his hand. They know where Tessis is, but it's only an AWP against him. And at that kind of
times, they're constantly changing things up, and it just makes things so difficult. For the Ninjas. It was something I mentioned. I was like, I don't think they've really gone for too much of a B play thus far. Heroic clearly
preempted by Tessis on that peak, knowing it was coming into play. But apart from a couple times where they've tried their hand at that, we've not really seen NiP go too aggressively. And when they have, they've been dealt with, as we're seeing again. Just getting slapped right in the face by the Orpus Thorn, who's gone in for another. It's a 3K. Just styling on NiP. Straight up battering them at every given turn. It's another clean sweep. And if you missed the first map, by the way, you'd never think it, but Heroic lost it. The way they're playing right now, you'd assume that they're about to win this best of 3.
Yeah, I think one of the only good things about that first map for Heroic was this man here, and he's coming close to beating his frag tally from the last map. 19-4. Some of the players on his team haven't even had to do that much. Like, Tessis is 9-4. And as I said, it's not that he's playing particularly bad, at least in this map. He doesn't have anything to do, and even when he does, it's going to be aggression towards Pop. He should be dead here for sure. He does so much damage. It's actually going to be Nork to die as well. Baruch chiming in. Plopsky goes for the trade. I don't know how on earth Tessis is surviving here in Twist while a last-ditch effort to find a kill. It's 13-1, Vince. This is to try and get into, well, what is basically one more match to get to the final. And we're seeing a 13-1 on NiP's map choice.
Absolutely. It has been just a complete and utter closed case. At no point have you felt like NiP have been in this game. At no stage. They do have an entry. It's at least something they can start to work behind. There we go, a second, but Storm again. He's already on for over 20, flicking left and right, and nearly gets another one, but softens them up low enough. It will read 14 rounds Heroic, 1 to NiP as we move into the second half. Stay tuned. Scintillating Storm stuns the ninjas. He was absolutely on fire. 22 kills to his name, rifles, pistols, AWPs, it didn't matter. And now Heroic 14-1 in the lead. You read that right. You heard that right. That is the legitimate score. NiP have been completely dismantled. And on the CT side, they look to get aggressive through box hall, stacking 4 players at range, using the USP. But it's going to be Testis, of course, with a Glock from downtown who takes the head off of Rez, and now the T's can start to snake their way up and get close and personal. Use the Glocks where they're at their most powerful, and Storm now ripping in with headshots, goes in for another, but it's Borup that now stands up against Hampus. He's behind in terms of HP, a much needed round for NiP to try and salvage this, and Hampus at least locks it down. There is a way back, but it will be littered with obstacles, littered with problems. But the Swedes at least have a chance.
Nice round from Nork. It's going to be the one that ultimately gives them the pistol. And there was a couple of players there who managed to get a kill just before they died, which, well, it would just about save them here. And we got a lot of flashbangs here, Vince, which it's obviously a round that we don't expect much, but it excites me at least a little bit. Let's see what they can do with them. Got Borup at least out a little bit further, but ultimately this round is just going to be a slaughter. Finally something to celebrate if you are a Ninjas fan, other than maybe the first map. Fact is, though, if you did miss the first half of this map, you pretty much missed the map.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, Tom. But NiP, hot off the back of the pistol, have dealt the fatal blow on the eco as we expected, and now there should be some weapons finding their way into the hands of Heroic. It will include AKs, and 5 of them to be exact. So NiP didn't fully invest in their SMGs. They only have 1 on Plopsky, and they've got an AUG. So it's not as if NiP come through with 2 or 3 SMGs against full AK-47s. They have a way to maybe make this a bit costly, to maybe just stall out this game and delay the inevitable. And sometime in the very distant future, Tom, if they can string together a whole bunch of rounds, I might even begin to believe in the comeback.
Yeah, I was about to say, what are you eating if NiP bring this one back? Maybe
word.
some nice Swedish fish. I hope they do some interesting stuff down there.
I can't remember what it's called. It begins with an S, though, I think.
Well, I don't think you're going to have to worry about it, if I'm honest. But I think we might have to save that for another time. Nork, though, he has managed to get 1, and Tessis is fairly low on HP. Now, normally we talk about this being a little bit of a bonus round, but let's be real, it's not. They've got 2 players on no cash. In fact, the third in Hampus as well. So NiP, more than ever, need this round. Otherwise, map 3 is more than likely, and wow, Stown is just not stopping. He's in the middle of the A side. He's looking to hold it on his own. Hampus at least puts him down, but that's the ruse. And look at where Nico is. He's looking to push him from behind. Maybe if Nork got 2 there, there's some hope. But instead, he's heard the rotation. Hampus has no idea. Why would he? You're not going to expect him to be there. 15-3. Fist bumps to try and keep the motivation going. But the fact is, their money is wrecked. And they've got to try and win 12 rounds in a row just to get overtime.
It is looking a little bit grim. They do have an AWP and an M4. Nork, have a look at the kill disparity between him and the rest of the troops on NiP. Pretty jarring. 16 kills. He's had a good performance, but other than that, it's been so one-sided. A colossal effort on Heroic. They do get the first kill one more time, and what could very well be the last time on train. NiP now struggling. They have been submerged. They have a flashbang. That's basically it. Of course, no kits. They went for as much firepower as they possibly could. Scavenge out of this buy. And Heroic slowing it down. We've seen them play super aggressive. Now they're going to let NiP stew on this. Sweat it out. See if they maybe go for some desperation plays. Go for an over-rotation.
Smokes being set up. Molotovs to clear out any of the closer angles, the places that would be at risk, and the players from NiP are left so blind as they enter this site. Norkstorp is left without a chance in hell, and Plopsky needs to be a hero. He's managed to drop the bomb. It's a shame there's still 40-odd seconds on the clock, otherwise that might have made a difference. Rez and Nork to try and pull off the impossible, to start off a comeback that never should have been. Now, we saw Rez with the Deagle pull off something pretty crazy not too long ago. He didn't manage to win the round, but if he can chime in a little bit, help out Norkstorp, maybe there's a chance, but they don't have a kit, so they need to get moving, because Heroic, they're not going to face into them here. They've got absolutely no reason to, and now it's left on to Nork. The time ticking away, 2 players still to find, otherwise map 3 is more than certainly on the cards, and Storn, as he began, will shut it down. 27-7 is where he ends, Vince, and honestly, an unbelievable performance. It's off to the desk to try and tell us what on earth just happened.
With the right CPU, you can turn any game from familiar to phenomenal. Unleash the potential in all your gaming with Intel 10th Gen processors. With its optimal balance of threads, cores, and frequency to deliver elite real-world performance, only Intel can bring Marvel's Avengers to life with in-game PC optimizations. Supercharge your Marvel's Avengers experience with Intel Core i5, i7, and i9 processors.
If you thought map 1 was a swift affair, Train was about to speed through the station as their Danes fly their flag high. At 1 map apiece, we're now heading into Overpass as our final destination to settle who will be facing Astralis later on today. But before that, we've got a lot to be breaking down here on the desk. And Maui, it seemed like that double up setup for Heroic that they were bringing out on that CT side was just too hard of a nut to crack for NiP. Why did they struggle to counter this?
Yeah, so this is NiP's map pick. You have to assume that Stown and Cadian are going to be bringing out that double op, and credit to them for hitting pretty much every shot that they were gifted. But I actually went back and counted how many op kills there were. 27 op kills in the first half. And given that the pistol doesn't actually include guns, of course, that's 1.9 kills with an op per round. That is just crazy. And so I have to, when you're down 14-1 on your map pick, I have to bring out a little bit of criticism here for NiP. Where was the B exec? Where were the smoke plays where you would smoke right side bomb train, back green, just rain flashes over? Those kind of strats. We literally saw it in one of the first gun rounds for Heroic. They didn't even have to play too many on their T side, but they did use a really good anti-op strategy. But NiP, they needed to come out here with a few more execs, in my opinion, because they were just getting picked to shreds in those defaults by those ops.
Yeah, and of course, on that Heroic side, we see Stan again stepping up to the plate, being Mr. Consistent once again. And of course, Borup really opening the ability for them to get those orbs early on in that first pistol round.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you bring up Borup as well, because, you know, Borup, he struggles sometimes as far as on the kill feed side of things, but he is so deady to the cause. You see him running and gunning down in there, and he's always creating that space for players just like Stan. Because for Stan, as Maui mentioned, there was no anti-AWP setups coming up for NiP, and he was just DMing out there, just hitting shot after shot. And I gotta admit, this late into 2020, you rarely see AWP players having that much fun in the server, because their job just becomes tougher and tougher with the amount of utility, with the amount of protocols that teams and these individual players have. So definitely for Stan, he was having a blast on this trade.
Yeah, he was indeed. And of course, he's going to hopefully continue to have a blast moving on to Overpass. This will be our third and final decider map. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are coming into this, Maui, considering we have two teams that have played it, a similar amount of times, have a similar win percentage. For this to be the decider, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so I think one thing we have to bring it back to is just how consistent Stown's been. He's the only person in this series who has just been ownage from map 1 to map 2. And really, NiP, it's hard for anyone to really get going there. Knock actually did pretty decently on Train, but I'm looking a lot at Stown right here. But given the teams and their success on Overpass, I actually am slightly still in the NiP camp. I predicted them to start this one, but they have 3 very DreamHack Open. They beat Fnatic, they beat FaZe, and they beat ENCE. And they look good doing it on most of those games. Did go to OT on FaZe, though.
And that's what I want to bring up, right, Potter? We were talking about this in the sort of mental fortitude that NiP really had to have for that FaZe win. We know that they have so much experience of being able to adapt their gameplay around it as well.
Exactly, and that FaZe match as well, they were down 4-11 in that first half. Their T side of things, they didn't get to a hot start, but in that second map of Overpass, they're just ramping up, right? And we talked about it. NiP's default, although slow, although they weren't finding all the opening picks that they would have wanted, they absolutely dotted their I's, crossed their T's, and made sure that they made FaZe's job as difficult as possible. And if you keep swinging like that, eventually the rounds, the dubs, they'll be put on the board. So definitely, I like the resilience coming up from NiP, especially on Overpass.
Well, we'll see if they can keep up that resilient form as they clash heads with Heroic once again in our third and final decider map. Overpass is coming up after this.
after a barrage of difficulty, honestly, NiP came out looking pretty mediocre, I've got to say, Tom. Heroic looked great. They looked like a revitalized team after a pretty disappointing Vertigo. They trade maps, and now it's all down to Overpass. The last two maps simply do not matter anymore. It effectively comes down to a best of one for your tournament life, for your very survival.
Yeah, for sure. And for the wonderful ticket to go and fight up against Astralis as well. It's going to be a long day for the winner and maybe a bit more of a depressing one for the loser, as they won't be in the tournament anymore. The thing that's going to be interesting for me is, realistically, is consistency, where we've seen some very varied performances from map 1 to map 2. Hampus obviously being one of the standouts. There's only been two consistent things so far in this match. One is Storm being one of the best players. Like, he's currently got 50 kills across the two maps. The next highest is 34. And the other is actually Rez, and not for the right reasons. He's been someone we talked about going into this series that has had some standout performances for the Ninjas. He's currently right at the bottom of the board. Now, I think things need to change for the Ninjas. If they're going to take this one, they need him on form, and maybe they need to try and shut down that young Dane.
Well, the next map is going to let us know exactly what happens next. Jewel Beretta's picked up on Nork.
Hell
interesting. Yeah. I'm definitely a fan. I've got to say, I'm on board with this. Where does he play with them? He's actually headed towards the B side with Plopsky just alongside him. Twist behind in heaven and some aggression. Action and the early damage start to rummage their way towards the B side. But Plopsky's there with the USP, and Heroic about to pull the trigger on an all-out execute.
That's a lot of information gained, though, by Plopsky. He spotted a player and takes another one with him. The Jewel Berettas couldn't really be in a better position, if I'm being honest. There is somebody pushing in that direction, though, and the timing might just get the better of this CT side. Haidian, he's watched one man sneak.
and they'll get some information. They'll have some reads and tells.
Gone for Mac 10s. Okay, are they throwing this fast round in later? Yeah, I think they are. That's actually quite spicy because I was expecting them to do it in the last round. I said it's a very heroic-esque thing. Instead, they're just going to go running straight through. Plus, Plopski's done so much damage, but he doesn't get a single kill for it. Nico and Tess is both low. The B site, oh, Twist, he turns around. And that's it. That's round over. This is what I was expecting last round, and maybe that's why Heroic went, ahaha, we're going to wait one and then do it later.
Yeah, maybe anticipating that, you know, once Nork had an AWP in his hands, that he'd be playing a little bit more statically. The round isn't done just yet, though. Hampus is up close, and they did get a kill back from Nork's HE. Hampus cartwheels into his demise, and now it is just Nork looking to save. So Heroic, yeah, he did stall out the rush a little bit later. Nork connects, able to rummage backwards and potentially save this AWP yet. Will get tested again from Storm. Passes that with flying colors. No T's really up close enough to deny him this AWP either, so this is going to be costly. Heroic do need to replenish those fallen guns. That puts a couple of the players into a bit of an awkward position, but yeah, it's a great execute. No real chance for Plopski, who was caught out a monster with tons of flashbangs in his eyes. And now NiP will be calling a tactical timeout just to get themselves on the same page.
And 2018 wouldn't even be this iteration of the roster, of course, recently having in-game leaders changed and us edging ever closer to 2021, which is a terrifying thought. But yeah, I love those sort of pace changes from Heroic. It's something that they do quite regularly, and I think only work because this team has full faith in their in-game leader. That's something we've seen in many interviews, that whether or not Haidian will say something almost completely crazy, the team will follow it. And we have evidence of that because they tried to P90 rush end a game the other day. That round, though, they had the money for AWPs, they had the money for AKs, but they went for Mac 10s just to make sure they had that initial sprint speed. And while Nork, you mentioned that save AWP, he's going to go down. Luckily, there is a second one, and Rez has been able to find Nico, with Storm also tagged and Rez now taking some initiative. Now, as mentioned, he's been a bit quiet in this series so far. They're going to need him if they're going to win this one.
Oh, most certainly. He is right now slap bang at the bottom, performance-wise, of NiP, which is pretty scary because he's typically one of the players that they rest on. It's really him and Hampus alongside Nork. Meanwhile, Storm, you mentioned he's on 50 frags. He's on a 1.71 rating for the best of 3. Not just for Train, for both maps combined. Plopski gets aggressive, but Tessis cuts him down before he can retreat back onto the site. And with his loss of life, Rest will feel like he has to come out and make his impact felt. Decent idea with the spray, but actually coming out worse in that trade. Dropped to 25. And now that Connector has been taken control over, purely off those perforated rounds through the wall, now Heroic can make the most of it, jump on top of the site and get a post plant for themselves. Now, whether NiP come in for this retake is yet to be seen, but I would imagine not, judging by Twist's current positioning, and their economy doesn't really afford them to take this risk either. You'd then be looking at a 5-1 deficit with basically nothing into the next round. So again, the Danes starting so deadly.
Yeah, the only real saving grace for NiP is that the loss bonus for them still won't be too bad with the 1 round sort of reset, but this is not a good position to be in, especially with Heroic starting to really gain momentum on the T side. Now, they might be able to wipe out a few weapons, but I would be surprised if Heroic pushed too much further than this, because there is absolutely no reason to. You've already survived the bomb, you've got 3 guns standing, and their economy, it's good, but it definitely could be better with how things are going so far. That is filth from Testis, and he's someone else. Like we sort of mentioned how good Storm's been doing. He played well on Train, don't get me wrong, but I don't think there was a weak player. We're yet to see that sort of peak level from him just yet. And that's a pretty scary prospect considering how good he's been throughout this tournament.
Yeah, true. He's middle of the pack these last 2 maps. And Storm, I mean, you did already highlight this. He's head and shoulders above everyone else. Now, we said Rez needs to have a big upward trajectory in terms of performance. Hell of a shot. And it could just be in the nick of time. Because him alongside the M4, the only things they have, Hampus, culling Tessis in rotation through towards the bathrooms. And now they can boost up again, and Rez is hungry for more. He sees the shadow, he pounces on it, and the Swedes with just 2 weapons by their side are making this work.
Round is looking utterly dominant, and it's mainly off just a few individual pieces of aggression, positions potentially not being checked properly. Haidian, he's expecting this flank. That's 1 for free. I don't expect to get too many more like that. Hampus was someone who hadn't really had too much in this round thus far. They're going to look to try and group up and play this together. There are still only 2 weapons, and the remaining 2 actually don't have any armor at all. Plopsky alongside Twist are the one holding on to this B site. The worry for Twist is that obviously he does have multiple angles to try and hold on to, and if they do just bypass him through long, they could get a free kill. The thing is, though, his timing is perfect. Already rotating in to hold on to the cross. I don't really see a way out of this unless Barup's going to hit some pretty tasty shots. And his teammate of Haidian is not even going for this, it seems. A bit of a peculiar one. Like, he was holding the cross, waiting for someone to push him, but there was 10 seconds. I don't really know how he planned to get the bomb down. It's almost like he just sent Barup in to die.
Yeah, it's that indecision that we saw in Vertigo. There's one round that sticks out in my mind. They had 15 seconds left. They had Nico rotate all the way around the back, and they planted the bomb, but it was a second too late. And we both sat there scratching our heads like, what just happened? It's a very similar kind of scenario there. I mean, fair play. You're in effectively, what, like a 2v4, 2v3. It's unlikely you're going to get anything done, and Katie wants to hold on to the AWP. Fair enough, but then surely you play together. Plopsky, this time though, the flashes connect, but he already had his crosshair in perfect position. All he had to do was control the spray, hold down the trigger, and the bullets do the talking for him. They went for that mix-up on pace, the monster push. But they have been cut down where they stand. And the Swedes are right back into this map after a very slow and sketchy start.
Yeah, and I like how they're not just committed to this one play. This is more like what we saw on Vertigo, where there are a multitude of aggressive plays coming out from the ninjas, and they're making things very awkward for Heroic. The reason they can dedicate so many players at this site at the moment is because of Rez's position. He has all the information they could ever need right now that they are not going back. And then they also have Nork holding onto the connector. So the other 3 players can just sit safely knowing that there is absolutely no way that they can come in from behind. So with 40 seconds left, they know Heroic is still looking to head into Beijing-Haidian though. That's an opener, and Tessis has somehow got another. They may have been waiting for this push. It seems like Heroic are just on point.
2 beautiful entries, but Twist suppresses Haidian. Looking to skewer the rest of the T's. Impair the push. Tessis, last man standing. 8 HP to his name. And could try and force the plant down. Will be getting fragged afterwards, or perhaps not. Rez has missed his chance, but Nork through the boxes will pummel him. And I was about to also highlight that they both had AWPs. So it's that kind of very scary situation where if you miss with the AWP, you're basically vulnerable to instantly get fragged. But NiP do hold the line. They keep both AWPs in play. But with a post-plant, Heroic have choices. Do they want to come straight back in with another buy? But this was the key moment. Sure, Heroic got themselves back into the round purely off raw entries, but that double spray from Plopsky was huge.
Yeah, that's the risk of that play. Like where we saw it from Astralis yesterday, and in a similar regard, is that realistically, like, you're going to go for that play and it's a 50-50 chance. Like, either you get that opener or that happens. And well, this time NiP got a little bit luckier. Storm had over half the amount of kills of NiP had. That's gross. Yeah, that's definitely disgusting. He was absolutely ridiculous though. I think he ended 27-7, and if there had been more rounds, there's no doubt he would have got more kills. chances are we may not see too much of his AWP in this map because Overpass isn't one that really relies on it as much. It's more of a gimmicky play if things are going wrong, and especially on the T side, I don't expect to see it from him at all. This round, though, are they going to attempt it again? Because they've still got an SMG, they've got a pistol as well. Utility's not great. It's a weaker buy, that's for sure. And I'm telling you now, that the last thing I would expect after I've just sprayed down 2 people through Monster is for them to try that again.
Yeah, this time, though, it's a little bit more subdued. It's a little bit stalled. So they didn't go off that first timing of the flash into just a wild spray, but they are going to be stalling it in. But now they're picking up the pace. Plopsky won't have his double. He gets forced off the sandbags into the arms of Haidian, but it's just a pistol by his side. And so that embrace is not felt. Twist now goes untouched by the flashbang, and he mows everybody down. Testis, last man alive again. He may get the element of surprise on the first player, but Twist is up to the task. A 4K across to the Swede, and a 4th round on top of it.
Really sick round from him, and especially the kill that came out from Plopsky. Sure, Haidian only had a pistol, but everything up until that point seemed like we were reading off the hymn sheet of what Heroic wanted to happen. They get the opener, they use their utility to force a player into Haidian, and the second he doesn't connect his shots, the round falls apart. Now, granted, a lot of it came down to just some impressive play from Twist, and I think a flashbang being slightly missed by the side of Heroic, but that was a really nice retake from them, and one that was important because those rounds can very, very easily get out of control. In fact, we saw it in the early stages. 4 in a row now for NiP. Looking like a much better position for them to be. Oh, no, it's not. Yeah, it's 4 in a row. No, 3 in a row, sorry. As they got one in the middle. So not quite as clean, but they are starting to drag things back a little bit. We're going to see an investment once again, and the loss bonus is building up for the side of Heroic. So they can afford to invest a little bit extra into this round. Some pistols alongside a hero AK for Barup. Now we are starting to see things step up a bit for the Ninjas. Interestingly, they actually do still run this double up setup, and both of them have been playing on the A site. It does mean that realistically, the faster players are likely to be the more successful, but with how strong the B site defense has been over the last few rounds, Vince, I do wonder if they might try something cheeky towards Connector to try and close Nork down with his current position.
It's certainly very possible. I mean, I feel like Haidian is the kind of IGL that gets reads and tells and then tries to adapt and be versatile as a result of that. Barup talked about it in his interview with Frankie, that he wants to be unpredictable. So certainly a case to be made that may come into fruition shortly. Barup just kind of talking over that because his chances were so slim. It turned out you're clairvoyant, Tom. They did get 4 in a row just a little bit later on, and now Heroic have another chance, and really this should be a bye. So can NiP continue this win streak? It would put them in the lead for the first time in our all-important decider. As I said before, the previous 2 maps no longer matter. This effectively comes down to a best of 1. Who has the courage to press forward and continue their pace? They will face off against Astralis next. Rez has already been smacked by a grenade, and he needs to tread lightly because Haidian, he's up close. There's some of that aggression we were looking for, and through Connector as well. 2 big entries on Heroic.
Finally punished a couple of players from NiP, and that's been the thing, that they have had so much information in this map so far based off it either being faster B plays, which have allowed them to push out in through mid, or just successful aggression coming out from Rez, which has made things awkward. Nork, though, with a nice shot at close range. Knows that there's a man on the other side. He's got to be careful, though, because Haidian is being a real nuisance. He caught out the first AWPer. He's looking to try and do the same with the second, but he's keeping an eye on it as he walks backwards towards A. Now, this could easily change from him being an aggressor towards Nork to him being an aggressor on the A side. Aggression from Hampus, though, and this could be everything. It was a 1v4 when he started. He's got it down to 2.
He's already got an ace to his name today, Tom. I feel like this would mean a lot more. It would be a 1v4. It would be a crippling round to lose in multiple facets as he moves in. Does take a dink and is finished off from Cadian. Well played by Hampus, but Heroic, their early entries did facilitate the round at the end. And a very unfortunate bit of timing for Nork as well. You saw him in connector. The second he switched to a nade, he got peaked. Those little moments that can turn a win into a loss or vice versa. And now Heroic comes straight back in with a Galil on Nico, which is not ideal, of course, but against AKs. And now NiP, they've got themselves one AWP. No longer the double AWP set up. They could afford it. They decided against going for it again.
This does look like we're seeing an adaptation now, though, from the side of Heroic. That is a nasty spams onto Twist. I would not be still shooting through that if I were you. It's so uncomfortable. He's got 21 HP. But yeah, the last few rounds, Heroic have started to send Cadian as a bit of a lurk player. This round it's Tesses, but they've noticed that they've been being pincered in. They've noticed that NiP have got a lot of information, so they've started to deny a lot of it. Nice re-aggression, though, from Hampus. He's going to catch out Nico. But it's Tessus on the map who I'm keeping an eye on. Sure, the B play's coming in, but he's going to start trying to sell a bit of a fake and possibly have a very good flank. Deep smoke thrown in, though, and the T starting to push into the site. Barup will get another opener, and this gives more and more space to Tessus as the seconds go by.
They have left Rez on the site, basically alone, and they've bit down on this hard. Rez now goes out looking for some information. May wide swing into Tessus, 30 seconds. He's about to find, in the worst possible way, that all the T's are looking to envelop the site. Nork caught in transition through on the dumpster, and Cadian punishes it. Post plant coming up. The IGL for the Danish team on 9 frags already, and is looking to turn the screws. Twist is miles away. He's still on the B side. He needs to get up there right now. On 15 HP, no less. Plopsky, realizing that time is of the essence, starts to move in alone, but that's to his detriment. And it just seems to me that NiP weren't on the same page at all. They were coming through slowly, disjointed, and our Twist, realizing that his days are numbered on 15 HP, tries to save the AWP. He scurries away. Heroic will regain a 2-round lead. Whether Twist survives is yet to be seen. But this round is over, and Twist's life could very well follow suit. He may just about hold on. The great escape. He does live.
He's very lucky that Cadian actually died to the bomb there. Otherwise, he probably would have been pincered. But Cadian a little bit too close. And unfortunately, that means that, in fact, Heroic only come out of that round with 1 weapon as well. The fact is, though, with the victory, they come in with slightly more finances. The double AWP is going to be returned for NiP. Now, it's something that has been relatively successful so far. Interestingly, neither of them are going to be on Nork. And once again, this fast play out. But do they expect 2 players to be within the barrels? It's Hampus to do a lot of damage. Plopsky's found the gun. Can he do anything more? Surely he should be dead, but he's surviving. He's living within the corner. And he's actually maybe going to get another kill off the back of it. He finds another through the smoke. And in fact, he even kills off the second as well. Smile across his face, of course. I think he knows that that's a little bit ridiculous to see. And while those fast plays from Heroic have started to be a real failure, I like the positioning as well. Putting 2 players on the barrels is a surprise. And while he did a great job of surviving.
That will be a gut punch for Heroic. Not only the fact that they would have felt that maybe even a 10-5 half was on the cards, but their economy has been shattered. They're down to Deagles. They're down to a P250. Hampus taking the initiative, gets aggressive, moving through the playground. Oh, there are so many T's around the corner, and he'll have free reign if he just checks to his left-hand side. Does he snatch at this opportunity? Does he line them up? He's going to wait for that lineup to come into play. Only getting 1, but doing so much damage to the others. I actually think he'll be disappointed with only 2 frags out of that, you know, Tom. Sure, he probably wins the round off the back of that, but he'll be thinking, geez, man, I could have had all of them. Like, they lined up perfectly for him. Unfortunate in the end, but it seems like NiP will be able to capitalize on that, barring some Herculean effort from the Danes.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you probably see yourself, you know, your names or your name up in lights, and instead you get 2. But the thing is, what he doesn't also realize is all the players with Kevlar are either dead or very close to being. So, if anything, he's made this more awkward for the remaining players of Heroic. A chance to equalize the scoreline, which, after an initial start of 5-1 in favor of Heroic, that really wouldn't be too bad if they can bring this all the way back. Some huge players coming out of this man right here, who's had a slightly quieter tournament than maybe we would have liked, and he's looking to try and close this round at least. Haidian spamming with the Deeg, and in fact, he'll get finished off by Twist. 7-7. We're going to get as close as a half can be to close this one out, although I will say, for the sake of this match, I kind of want NiP to get this final round, because going in at a deficit, going into your T side, it's not exactly the best.
Not the best sign, but to put a caveat on that, to play a bit of devil's advocate, the fact that they were 5-1 down at one stage early on, I feel like even if they do trail 8-7, they'll still be feeling pretty decent about things overall. But Nork, he could be in some trouble, and I think he realized that he just pulls the plug. Initially, he would have been swarmed in. Hampus, though, taking up the short control. They have a smoke on short pipe. Once that clears, it's going to start to put more pressure on these two Swedes that are watching short B. But not before Hampus puts a bullet in the head of Nico. That's a huge moment, alleviating a lot of that connector presence and the pressure of short pipe. Now they can focus. Rez looking into connector while Hampus watches in. They flash him in, lands in the eyes of Haidian, gives his position away, blind fire, maybe a bit of panic fire on top of it. The Hampus using that smoke, he actually darts away. He keeps that control over connector, and Rez knocks the bomb down. Heroic in trouble, and I don't see them retrieving this round. It would have to be some huge entries, and Haidian gets the first, but they still have no control over the bomb. Testis, beautiful peek, taking down Twist in the process, but Haidian caught out in no man's land, and with 35 seconds, they're in a 2v3, and they still need to retrieve the bomb. And Hampus is here, waiting, eagerly anticipating a peek, but Tessis still takes him out.
This round becoming far too close for comfort. Nork, the man to receive the remaining two Heroic members as the push begins. He lands the first shot, and now it is left on to Tessis. A 4K needed, a clutch to close the half, but he won't be able to. A decent comeback from the Ninjas, and now they need to continue on as the T side comes up after the break.
Elimination just a stone's throw away, and both teams staring down the abyss. Ninjas with a slight lead, but in terms of momentum, I'd say it's pretty favorable on their side of the coin. Heroic had a 5-1 lead, they let it slip, and now if the Swedes can get aggressive and successful behind it, things could start to slip away for Heroic. It will be aggressive. It will be up in the face of the CTs, but a connector sweep will get them one. Testis running out of ammunition, but Haidian steps up to the plate and helps his teammate out. Rez goes down, and Storm, who's played so passively, so patiently in the graffiti, gets one still somehow alive, and then Twist is going to go down to his hand. Spinning wildly, somehow keeps him alive. And now Nork needs to be ice cold in his resolve. Staring down a 1v4. Barely flinching, but he will be dispatched by Nico's hand. And Tom, I felt like NiP had the perfect start to that round. But then Storm struck.
Yeah, this is... well, it's been one of the common factors within this map so far. The thing is, what they were planning on doing was actually very smart. They see all of those players in the connector. They go, okay, let's rotate back up to A. Let's pretty much switch up where this round is going. And, well, I think a word that you love to use quite regularly, there was a little rat sat in the back lines, just sort of waiting to kill them off. And, yeah, it's infuriating. He was just sat there completely void of all other plays going on and wins a round for his team. Did I say it with enough anger? I know that's something that you have to.
Yeah, normally it's not safe for a stream of this caliber. But yeah, NiP, they will be feeling a bit hard done by. Storm played it so well. Loved the little spin around as well. It seems like panic, but actually it just makes the hitboxes that much more difficult for the Glock to connect with a headshot. So there was method behind the madness. And Haidian, MP9, you favor him to get 2, but maybe not a 3rd. Rez sprayed in to submission, maybe tapping out momentarily to the hands of Testis, but it's only at the cost of 1 life, and they can pick up the AK. They can't quite get their hands on the FAMAS, but it doesn't really matter. Heroic will be leading by a round, but here comes NiP over with some AKs.
Yeah, it was actually a hero AK dropped by Plopsky in the last round, so they took a big hit in an attempt to do some damage, and well, it didn't work. They took down 1 player, which it really wasn't worth the investment that they had. Now they need to capitalize off this round instead. Nade not doing anywhere near as much damage as I would have thought, and while the AK has come back to bite them. Sure, it's only a trade, but you have to realize that Haidian actually only had an MP5 in this round, so if anything, that's a worthwhile trade for the Danes.
That's certainly true. The aspect of it, though, that NiP will be happy about is it does thin out the defense that little bit more. Downside, though, as they may be about to find out, is that they've retreated over a 3rd player onto the A site. That will be Burup's FAMAS that joins the assault rifles in bathroom. Nico and Tess is still residing there. Burup will take the first point of call. He can then fall back and rely on that crossfire to come in from his teammates. Flashbang over. This is all a delaying tactic. Burup just needs to stay alive. But Ninjas, they read the situation perfectly, and Twist executes off it. The guillotine chopping down the 2 bathroom players. And in doing so, they now have the advantage in the post plant. Thorn, who's been a real monument on Heroic, shows again just how good his aim is. As Nork comes down to greet him. He's now the last line of defense, but he will fall to the hands of Storm, and it's a successful retake to boot. Heroic 10-8 lead.
Yeah, that's unfortunate as well, because that was somewhat a bonus round for the side of Heroic. They get some extra weaponry going forward into this one, and the bomb plant will help NiP at least put the pressure back on. But the scary thing is, as said, throughout this series so far, Tessus has yet to have one of his standout performances. I think we might be beginning to witness one, and I worry for the Ninjas, because if you have Storm performing, Tessus and Haidian now with his AWP, good luck.
Yet there isn't a weakness. So often, over the duration of this very tournament, you see a team start to make intel reads. They realize that a site is vulnerable, and they will just continually hit it over and over and over again. And then they'll set up that later down the line for a hit on the other side, realizing that they may stack too many players over on B, for example. Here, we saw that happen a lot when the roles were reversed and Heroic were on the T side to start off with. There aren't any vulnerabilities. There's no gaps in the armor. And that means that the Ninjas will have to up their game significantly, otherwise this will get out of control. Haidian with the AWP up close in bathroom, suppressing Rez, eviscerating him, and with it the push. There is a smoke down on long, but it actually doesn't affect either of the CTs, and they just close the gap. Haidian is burning alive, but stands his ground alongside Heroic, and they thwart this Tech-9 buy. Tactical timeout has been dropped, and NiP are running out of rounds. They're running out of time. They need to start posting some kind of comeback in effect.
This is giving me flashbacks to some of the rounds that NiP actually managed to win in the first half, where you see that they're able to get away with a lot of aggression on the defense. So Heroic have got a lot of different setups. Their CT side is very rarely the same as what we saw on Train, where they were constantly trying to switch things up, take different aggressions, look for different peaks. And they did it here again. They managed to take full water control, were watching for anybody around connector, and because of that, they were able to stack up 3 players on the A side. Now, they knew likely that this was going to be a weaker buy, so they were still fairly passive, but it gave them extra information that ultimately they could take a pick and fall back from if they needed to, and it just made it so that, again, NiP pretty much pincered the second that they went for just one play. Like, they didn't have any lurkers, which obviously is quite common when you do only have pistols.
4 rounds on the bounce. The Danes have been successful and victorious. And all 4 of them have been pretty straightforward. NiP, though, do have their hands on an AWP. Flashbang onto long, but Haidian doesn't miss. And he can quickly back off. Also, connector control being established. 2 players originally in there. But Storm drops out into the short side instead. Oh, Storm flicks across and takes Twist's head off. I thought that was the moment back into this round, but instead, the door gets slammed shut in NiP's face again. And they have to try and make some plays on long, but it's in a 2v5.
This round is over. Like, you can just see the amount of map control that Heroic currently have. It's filthy. They've got connector. Just look at where Stown is. He's gone all the way through Monster, back around, and he's now going to be holding for them coming back into the playground. There's nowhere that's safe currently. They have more map control than the T's, and they start off with the majority of it. Now, Tesla's going down could be a problem, but there's the bomb dropped. And Rez is currently having to retake the playground. That's not something you say very often in Counter-Strike. He's got 15 seconds, which for anybody who doesn't realize, that means he's got no time. And even still, Haidian's going to go looking for the final frag. They are pummeling NiP in this second half, and the Ninjas desperately need a change.
It's that boa constrictor mentality that we talked about before. Every time NiP take a breath, they exhale, it just tightens that little bit more. Never feel like you have any space. Never feel like you have any reprieve. Heroic switching up the pace as they did on Train. And NiP have just not been able to handle it at all. This is another half buy. Heroic have been very good at thwarting these kind of rounds in the past. Smoke down into connector. And NiP now making moves in there. So at least they have control over connector, which typically is the focal point of overpass. The boost is a little bit too late, but Storm getting information, now snaps back into action. There's one getting traded out through the short pipe, but they still hold on. They still have their crosshairs put firmly onto the heads, and they are not letting go. There doesn't seem to be anywhere where NiP can move in to get any ground for themselves.
I almost want to see them just try some of the faster plays we saw from Heroic. Like, just attempt to pace change, because at the moment, Heroic are gaining far too much map control far too easily because of these slower default rounds, and well, let's be honest, even in the pick play, Heroic are winning every single fight. It leaves Rez again in a position where, sure, a bomb plant would be nice, but ultimately you're still just trying to keep the economy low of Heroic, although with Haidian about to hit 10 grand plus, that hasn't been going particularly well so far. They're holding on for this cross as well. Rez is... Oh, they should be dead. Nico maybe just playing with his food a little bit. 13-8. We've seen nothing so far from the Ninjas. And yeah, I'm glad they're taking a second tactical pause. Give yourselves a moment. Try and rework things and potentially just group up. Because the fact is, these defaults haven't been working. These plays that work out slowly haven't been going too well because too much space is being given. They need to just start basically disallowing this Heroic side from getting so much map control.
I would like to see some kind of a fast play, but I would worry at this point, Tom, after calling a timeout. Is that a bit telegraphed? You know, you've been playing so slowly that you call a timeout, then you rush it. I feel like Heroic are going to know exactly what's coming up. So maybe this is where the reverse psychology comes in.
They've invested into an AWP, so if they did something like that now, I'd be quite surprised because, well, we saw what Heroic were doing on the other side where they would basically just invest into SMGs. In fact, it's going to be the polar opposite. If anything, Heroic have now become more aggressive. They've got 3 players looking to try and battle here. Sure, it's an early trade, and actually Nico didn't get as much as I thought he would have done. It's Plopsky instead with a huge play, but we still end up in a 2v2. Now, Storm is trapped. He should be dead, and he will be, but Barup is going to get a very easy trade. They didn't expect the final player to be on the B site. However, this leaves for a 1v1. Plopsky, he's got 3 kills already. Barup is trying to cancel the 4K.
Yeah, Barup actually has significantly less frags than Plopsky as well. Plopsky is certainly one of the heavier hitters right now on the Swedes. But a lot of those kills have not been necessary on Barup. And we've already seen on Train in particular, he really had some huge moments. So we know he has it within him. As he moves into position, he anticipated that it would be a B hit. As a HE, but that's it. And now they come head to head. The timing for Plopsky could not have been sweeter. And NiP with only their first T round. They led 8-7, remember, at halftime. So they have finally got success, but it's mainly off the back of just hyper-aggression on the CTs. That's not something they can rely on round in, round out. They still need to prove to us that they can get this done.
Well, that's the thing. I think we see this from both Heroic and Astralis, where they'll go for something really outrageous. Lose the round sometimes, and then just fall back into their defaults, and that's so difficult to break down. The fact is, a lot of their default rounds at the moment involve still taking a hell of a lot of map control. And look at the flashbang that comes through. It's so perfect. Plopsky's blind for, well, a good few seconds. And by the time he's able to see again, he's already out of the round. He's watching a teammate play and wondering what happened.
Exquisite counter-strike, really, from Heroic. They have this systematic control over so many different angles. They're spinning those plates, but keeping them all in motion. And now Rez, who's been the last man standing a lot of the time, now has a chance to have impact before his teammates crumble around him. They've already lost Plopsky, but Twist additionally is low. Tessis, different angle. Haven't really seen them playing this just yet. He can see the shadow. Oh, that's the bomb down as well. Not only is it the AWP, but the bomb, and that's information that goes with it. They can keep 3 players over on the A side. Good utility toss behind it. They can stall and deny this for so much time. NiP finally get the hands on the bomb, and the fact that Twisters came through and got an entry on towards the B side does give them a little bit of wiggle room, but he's now been dispatched. Storm holding his ground, just needs to stay alive. He's picked up another kill. He's moved on to even more frags to his name, continues to have a stellar performance. And even though Rez comes through the shadows of the smoke, Tessis will strike. Heroic just 2 away from eliminating the Ninjas.
Yeah, they currently have 3 players now above 20 kills off the back of this round, and as said, it's that trio. That trio is unstoppable. Like, we talk about the likes of Nico and Barup sort of being the more supportive players within this team. It's that trio that you just can't really do anything about. And on the other side, a few members have now started to go a little bit quiet, and that's a worry. At the same time, Storm, I believed, actually had a relatively quiet first half. I think he was on about maybe 9 kills. I don't think it was anything like blowing us away. Now sat at the very top of the server, 22 for the young Dane. And this is the terrifying thing about him and Testes, is that I just don't see a way back now. There needs to be another big play, and that's the thing. That's the only round they've got. It was Plopsky getting a quad kill to win them a round. That's it. So far, other than that, they've had nothing.
A quad kill based off a very aggressive heroic hit that just didn't work out.
Yeah.
So it's not as if they had some like really slick execute and Plopsky was just finishing off the frags. No. It was heroic, overstepping the mark, overstaying their welcome, but also kind of setting up to go back into their default, and NiP just walking into the trap. Multiple players have been spotted jumping out of connector. To put it in context as well, by the way, as Testes just sprays through them. There's 3 beautiful spray control. The transfer on point, but Storm has 72 frags in this best of 3. And consider that one of the maps was 16-3 and the other was 16-8. By anyone's standards, that is world class. And now NiP have Plopsky and Twist to try and salvage what has been a bit of a disaster of a round, with Testes pulling the strings. He has at least been silenced, so they don't have to deal with him anymore, but they do have to deal with another 4 heroic players. Twist maybe missing his chance. It's a good flashbang, lands in the eyes of the aggressing bathroom player, but there's an incendiary to deal with them, and Haidian round the corner, shooting Plopsky. That wasn't a no-scope, he was looking down the scope there. That's outrageous.
They've managed just 1 round, Vince, in this second half. They're going to need 6 in a row. Now, we've spoken about the magic of the ninjas maybe still living on, even if the players have moved away. I'll be honest, Dignitas magic doesn't have the same ring to it anyway. Question is, do they have anything left? Testes is trying to make sure they don't, but again, it's the same aggression that they get punished for. They've lost 2 of their star fraggers within this map so far. Now, luckily for Heroic, they've had 3. But this also gives some extra weaponry over. This buy from the ninjas wasn't exactly too pretty. They'll have picked up some extra utility as well. And if they require it, an AWP. Nico, though, got very far. The thing is, because of this, they've got B.
Yeah, it's almost like a false positive, isn't it? It's like, yeah, I've got to... Well, they're on B, mate, to be honest, so cool. I guess they're just saving at this stage. And they may not be afforded that luxury. Plopsky's coming up. And he really has been the shining light on NiP, on Overpass. He's on 20 kills. It feels like whenever they've been successful, it's been him pulling the strings. So they'll be hoping that continues for quite a while to come yet. It looks like they will be getting 10 rounds. Only their second on their T-half. But maybe there are some inroads that they can really put down range. Again, though, Tom, I don't want to take any of NiP's thunder away from them. It was off the back of an aggressive middle play, again, that just backfired. It's not like they're out maneuvering or their set plays are super crisp. As I'm speaking, Heroic will save their 2 weapons, but these aren't really the plays that you can rely on for the next 5 rounds to take you into overtime.
Yeah, I feel like that these are the sort of rounds that Heroic almost like use to try and reset their palette. It's like just having a little bit of wasabi or something just to go, no, you didn't see that coming, did you? Right, now we're going to go back to just wrecking you again. Like they've done that once already. It didn't work. They've done it again. It also didn't work. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they now go and win this round in the same sort of form. And they've invested into the double AWP. We saw the double AWP on Train. It was terrifying. Now on Overpass, as said before, Vince, it's almost used as a bit of a gimmick. Well, Heroic need 1 round. A gimmick is absolutely fine.
Yeah, and I mean, NiP were using it consistently, and it got them tons of kills. They used it 3 or 4 times from memory. So we know in the right hands it can work. We had Storm going aggro into connector, got flashed out and forced away. They still get the entry, though, from the other AWPer of Cadian, who was up on the flower beds when he struck on Nork. Hampus has taken some very forward positioning, as have his teammates in Monster. Flashes and smokes being tossed out. Heroic aren't fully biting down on this, not fully respecting that it will be a B hit, but now that they've lost Nico, that may force them to respect this prowess. Because the predators of NiP are coming in, and they can sense weakness. They can sense blood in the water. They're ready to strike. Burrup will go down on barrels. 2 players push at the back of Graffiti, one of which is Tessis. He's landed his 25th kill. NiP could be their last play of this best of 3, their last play of this tournament, but they are doing the damage. They're keeping themselves in this.
What?
They're taking tons themselves. Those Thorn flicks across and lands a shot onto Plopsky, who now goes in for the bomb plant successfully. Incendiary toss towards the side. If that extends a little bit further, Plopsky may very well burn, but I think he'll be okay. And because that Incendiary doesn't claim a life, Heroic have to turn tail. They have to save.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I think even if you know how much damage you've done, is it worth sacrificing your economy for this round? Well, if you win it, sure, but that's not something they can confirm or deny, so they're just going to have to sacrifice this one. Now, in terms of other rounds, we've spoken about how they've almost been handed to NiP on a plate. This one was taken with both hands. A better sign for them, even if it was close. And maybe that'll be a little bit of extra wind in their sails. They finally managed to get through the B side. The only thing I will say is normally we see Stown playing here deep within the site, and that's been someone they've actually really struggled to deal with. This time, though, because of his AWP, it's a little bit different. But there is still a purchase here for Heroic. It's definitely not perfect, but it is still pretty damn good. The AWP going to be handed back over to Cadian, and again, we're seeing more of these rounds where Ninjas are trying to deny them taking any control. That nade, though, is filth. Twist has caught that in his hands. Now, Hampus is going to be the one to try and make a play.
Oh, that flash. Hampus' retinas were just burnt out of his skull. Right in his face. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Tom. You absolutely nailed it there. That this is the first time that NiP have really taken control of a round. And they've made it theirs. And they conceded the first kill in the round, remember, as well, from Cadian. So maybe the tide is turning. But they are going to have to come from behind again here if they keep themselves alive from elimination. And Cadian pivots in for a second. All the utility is centralized on Rez. Molotov to the back of the site. Tessis now can open up and he can start to spray down. Rez in a 1v5 for the H's, but Cadian with the AWP is too good. And that will be Heroic, taking down NiP and moving to face off against Astralis.
Yeah, it's a battle I'm sure we can't wait to see, but I think we need to give credit to the Ninjas. They came into this tournament bringing Nork back into the roster, and it was one that we weren't sure what to expect from them. They've come in, they've eliminated some pretty damn impressive teams along the way, and they've still finished top 4. That's a hell of a lot of RMR points, some EPL points as well. So, you know what? Let's give them a little bit of credit where it's due, but again, that triple threat, those 3 players, Tessis, Storm, Cadian, when they're on fire, Vince, there's nothing you can do.
Storm was world-class, Tom. I don't know what else to say. The guy had such a phenomenal performance, and I can't wait to see how he performs against Astralis. But that will be later today in our third best of 3. We're going to throw it to the desk, however, and have them break down that awesome overpass.
With the right CPU, you can turn any game from familiar to phenomenal. Unleash the potential in all your gaming with Intel 10th Gen processors. With its optimal balance of threads, cores, and frequency to deliver elite real-world performance, only Intel can bring Marvel's Avengers to life with in-game PC optimizations. Supercharge your Marvel's Avengers experience with Intel Core i5, i7, and i9 processors.
The Scandinavian showdown would come to a close on Overpass, and with tournament life hanging in the balance, the Great Danes would be the ones to overthrow the Swedes. 16-11, and with that, a place against their fellow countrymen of Astralis later this evening as they battle for a spot at tomorrow's grand final. Joining me to break down exactly how they sealed this place, the wonderful Maui and Potter. And Maui, to be fair to NiP, they made it incredibly close in that first half. How did Heroic run away with it on their CT side?
Yeah, the CT performances from players like Tessus and Sound really carried them there, and I think that's where Heroic has really made a leap in recent months, is just their individuals. Before this match, I was actually ready to really praise Knock because he was doing incredibly well in map 1 and 2. I had puns like knocking on heaven's door, knock knock, who's there? It's knocked up, knockout punch. I was ready for it all, but I had to flip the script there, and I had to go with Sound went to town. So that's where I ended up here, and he painted the Sound red. All right, so good stuff from the individual stuff from Heroic.
You can leave now, man. Me and Potter will take this one for you. Because Potter, we were sort of talking about it beforehand as well. Coming into this map, we've seen some really solid stuff from NiP on Overpass, particularly against FaZe. They had that mental fortitude to get back into it with an even worse scoreline than what was presented here. So in your perspective, kind of what was missing for NiP coming into this?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned those previous matches, because in those matches, it was a bit of a different NiP than what we saw here on this match. Rez busting out that secondary op, and we always compliment the secondary op, but the game plan for NiP, it seemed a little disconnected, right? Because when we saw NiP at their best, it was Rez on that rifle, controlling the bathrooms and giving it up all on his